Hi, howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
I spent years searching for the bombing location, and I'm 99% sure that I found it several years ago. So we go Bigfooting there a lot. And that's like 130, 135 years ago that somebody saw a Bigfoot and claims that it killed his buddy. And
Yep.
you know, and the natives and the settlers in the area warned them before they went in there trapping that there was a wild man in there known to attack and kill people.
The natives warned them in advance too. I don't know how much more research you've done on that, but that was that was not the first death in the area. There had already been a guy before that, not very long before it actually, who had gone into that area and disappeared. So that area already had a bad reputation, and the local natives and the settlers there knew about it, and they warned Bauman, bad spot, don't go there. And this area was also called Bloody Dick at one point, and they just recently changed the name during the 80s because everybody kept stealing the road sign. And the reason they called it Bloody Dick is because there was a miner named Dick who came into town one day beaten to piss and claimed some kind of ape monsters jumped him and beat him up. And he didn't even survive the night. And they felt so bad for the guy, they named the town Bloody Dick because Bloody Dick came into town beaten to a pulp and died.
Well, I have a theory why the Bigfoot in and around the Montana area are so raunchy, and I think it's because they have to deal with raunchy grizzly bears. They've grown up alongside. I mean, and the grizzly bears.
Think about how big they are, Kelly. They have to deal with 1,000-pound grizzly bears. That makes for some really big alpha males.
Yeah. Well, and I know when Lewis and Clark come through the North Fork and the Salmon area, the grizzlies were so thick that they wouldn't travel down by the river because that's what
you just get jumped by a grizzly every 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That's where the grizzlies like. So they stayed high up on the mountain and took the high road, the tough road, to stay away from the grizzlies. They were so thick. Well, if Bigfoot are inhabiting the area and having to deal with them, they either have to avoid them or be tougher than them. And I'm pretty sure they're tougher than the grizzlies. And yeah. they probably forced their dominance on them to, make them clear way.
There's some big boys up in our regular research area. We're routinely finding tracks between 18 and 22 inches. Big boys.
Yeah, and see, the biggest one I've found here in northern Utah is 19 inches.
That's still plenty fucking big, dude. That's a big fucking track.
I had nightmares the night after we found his tracks, and well, they were fresh tracks. It'd been raining, and the vegetation was still smashed down inside the tracks, and it was a trackway of them. And Brody and I stayed out there in the rain and cast it and everything. And I was in shock. I was just in shock that, I could imagine the size and the weight of this thing that made that. And our base camp was only 5 miles away. And then, and then we come back to base camp, and Jenny stayed in base camp. She was sick. And we come back and showed her the cast, told her what happened and everything. And then in the middle of the night, I woke up with nightmares. I thought that thing was coming in the tent after us and everything. So yeah, it provoked a nightmare. I mean, I've since become desensitized. I don't have those kind of nightmares anymore.
No, what annoys me now is when they come up and shake the tent to wake you up, and you go away. I'm trying to sleep. I'll get out in the morning again.
Oh, hell.
Twice now. They've done that fucking twice. The one was really insistent. We went to bed earlier than usual. Usually we have somebody up until like 2 o'clock in the morning BSing in camp, and they get close. They listen to what we're talking about. Apparently it's entertaining. Well, everybody was tired, so we all went to bed early. I was still the last one that went to sleep, and I think it was like 12:30. I crawled in my tent. And as soon as I crawled in my tent, blip, something hits the tent. About 30 seconds later, blip, something hits the tent. They're throwing like little acorns or rocks or something at the tent. And this went on for like 45 minutes. And I was just like, I'm not getting up again. I'm freaking tired. I want to go to sleep. And I'm just about dozing off. And all of a sudden, hear a crunch, crunch right next to my tent. And I go, hey guys, if you're hungry, there's donuts on the table. I want to go to sleep. Can you just leave me alone now? And he did. He fucking left. That was the end of it.
Well, I'll tell
We
you
have
what,
very polite Sasquatch up here in my research area, Kelly.
the first time that we stayed the night in the bombing area, we stayed on the Montana side of the border, and we stayed there for like 3 nights. And anyway, that first night we got there late, just before the sun was going down, and the elk were bugling across the river from us. And so I wanted to capture them bugling, and so I decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's like, hey, let's set up a camera and time lapse ourselves setting up the tent, and then if we catch any bugles, then cool, we got the elks bugling. So I set up the camera, we get started on the tent, and not even a minute later, up on the mountain, this big old roar, deep roar. And you know, it's not a mountain lion, and I don't know, maybe it was a bear. I've never heard a bear roar like that though, but it roared and it scared all the elk away. And so I never did get the elk bugling. And I had a pretty crappy camera with crappy audio, but we still got some of that on there. And then the sun went down, and so Jenny and I are like shitting our pants that we're out there with whatever made that roar. And even if it is a bear, which I don't think it was, you know, that's pretty scary. And so we kept the fire stalked and stayed up late, and then went to bed. She kept waking me up, kept on hearing it pacing on the other side of the river, and it kept on reminding me of the bombing situation. That's kind of how theirs started, is they would see it pacing on the other side of the river, and I would get up with the spotlights, and we'd spotlight over there and stalk the fire up, and never seen it. And then partway into the night, she wakes me up again, and it seems like I would just barely doze off, and she's waking me up, and I look up at her, and I'm like, "You're not going to let me sleep tonight, are you?" She's like, she goes, "I heard it cross the river. It's on our side of the river now." And I'm like, oh shit. So I go out with the spotlight and start looking for it again, stalk the fire up, never did see it. But she kept waking me up, and we would hear it walking around our tent. And I even one time grabbed the air horn and wah, because what's the use? It's not showing itself. We're not going to get it on film, so leave us alone. And we still don't know what it was. But that was our first night there, and then the next couple of nights we had no problem. But that first night, when it roared up on the mountain, may very well be the local Bigfoot messing with us.
That's unusual too, because generally they let you camp there for, you know, it's like the second or third night that they get rambunctious and go, "Hey, humans, get the hell out of here. What are you still doing here?" And they come down and start messing around with your camp.
What didn't make sense to me is I'm pretty sure that an elk is a meal source for the Bigfoot. I think the Bigfoot,
guaranteed.
I think they eat what the elk eat, because I believe they're omnivores, so they eat what the elk eat, and they also eat an elk if they can get a hold of one. So I'm just like, why did it scare all the elk off? But perhaps it felt like we were ruining its hunting chances anyway, and did that out of frustration that we're camping right in its territory, because this is a remote place. People just don't go into this bombing area. And once we figured it out and went in there, our very first night, I think that was the welcoming committee.
I got an area I'm looking forward to doing an investigation on here this summer. Again, my friend that called me in the middle of the night last night, he found this one spot, and he used to be, his dad was the head of forestry here locally. So he grew up just hiking, camping, hunting, blah, blah. He was out in the woods all the time. So he went in this one area up at the end of where there's this access road, and then he realized that there was another older, probably logging road or something that was right next to it that went off in a different direction. And, you know, you can't even get a car up to where this thing starts. So he walks in there and he follows it, and it goes up about 3 miles. And he said it goes into this stand of old growth forest. These trees are 500-600 years old. And there's all these weird looking mushrooms and stuff that you just don't see in any other parts of Montana. And I was starting to go in there, and all of a sudden I started hearing these loud noises. And then I saw the smaller trees in this thicket in front of me start whipping back and forth. And I said, "What happened then?" And he said, "Then a couple of the trees came flying at me, And I went, well, trees don't uproot themselves and go flying through the air. And he goes, I know, that's why I left. And I think I know what's there. So maybe I want to, if you want to come with me, I'll show you where it is. And I'm like, yeah, let's go up there. I want to see where the trees uproot themselves and go flying through the air toward you. And this guy has been like not wanting to believe that Bigfoot is real. And since he's been hanging around with me, he's getting all this information on what signs to look for and stuff. And now he's running it through his head of all this stuff that's happened in the past. And he's like 99% sure they're real now. And it's creeping him out really bad because he didn't like the idea that there's these big things running around the woods like that watching him. And the last time he was up in that really old, original forest area, that was what he said too. He said, man, there was something watching me the whole time I was up there. And it felt like it was not happy I was there.
And they do. And they'll sometimes watch you from a close distance, and they're really good at not being seen. As a matter of fact, my second sighting that I just had a couple of months ago, I've only had 2 sightings that was clear enough that I can say for 100% certain that's a Bigfoot. And that Bigfoot was watching us. And I caught him in my rear view mirror. Jenny and I went up to collect some game cameras, or not collect them, but to service them. And on the way up, we had to go to the bathroom real bad. And I stopped on a random dirt road I've never been on before. First opportunity, pulled off to go to the bathroom. I get out of the truck and I just peed right next to the truck. Jenny goes and hides in the trees, goes to the bathroom, and I just waited outside for her. I keep a close eye on her when we're in the woods. And she comes back. We both get in, and I start the vehicle and I go to throw it in reverse, and I look up in my rear view mirror, and my mind instantly thinks it's a dude behind us. And I'm,
oh, crap.
All these thousands of thoughts go through your mind in one instant. And I'm like, what a creepy bastard watching us, pee.
Yeah.
And the first thing out of my mouth is, there's a dude back there. And then as soon as I get that out of my mouth, I realize it's not a dude. It's a dark brown Bigfoot, and he's huge. And I'm looking at him in my rear view mirror, like between 30 and 40 feet away. He was up on this embankment behind a log that had fallen over, or a tree that had fallen over. Well, then I grab my camera, and Jenny sees the look on my face, and she's like, it's a Bigfoot. And I'm like, yep. I rip out of the door and I go running after it. Well, anyway, when I told her there's a dude behind us, and that's when I realized it was no dude, it ran this direction in my rear view mirror, and boom, I probably stared at it for like 3 seconds, but as soon as I said that, it split to the left and disappeared from the frame of my rear view mirror and my rear window. And then I dove out, and it was already into the trees when I dove out. Well, I go running up to the log it was standing behind. Yeah, I'm stupid.
Kelly, you lunatic. You're as bad as me. I've done that before too.
Well, I think I was just everything was going so quick. I wasn't, thinking I needed to be careful.
Like, where's the camera? I got to film them.
So I run up to the log, and that's when I realized how big it was, because it was standing behind the log staring at us, and I could see the space between its thighs and its upper thighs on the other side of the log. I get up to the log, and my belly button is hitting the top of the log. So that's a couple of feet taller than me, at least. I'm guessing it was 7.5 feet tall. Not as big as the very first one I saw a few years earlier. Well, Jenny and I immediately start tracking it. We find its tracks right away, and in our video that we made, because we started filming immediately, we recorded the tracks, but we tracked it around for about an hour to some private property. And what's weird is, I think we lost the tracks, picked it up a couple of times, and when we found it next to the property, it wasn't the tracks of it going away. It was a track of it stepping over the fence onto public lands. So I had no reason to go onto the private property, because that's where it had come from. Right. Originally, I could tell the way the tracks were going, but you know, these tracks were about 18 inches big, and then we found also another set of smaller ones, and I don't. That's the norm. Usually, when we find Bigfoot tracks, if we search around enough, we'll find one or two, sometimes more individuals. I think this people's stereotype that it's a lone creature is wrong.
No, they usually travel in groups.
Mm,
They're almost always together.
I'm sure there's the rare exceptions where you got
It's
a
the big
lone
males.
male
The
running
big
around.
males will roam around by themselves. Kreider noticed this because he's got an area where they tend to stash the females and the kids. And he can go down there, and the females and the kids are down there all the time. But the males only show up maybe every week or every 2 weeks. They're making a big loop running around somewhere, and they'll stop back to see how wife and kids are doing and hang around for a day or so, and then they'll go wander off again. And I don't know if you saw the last episode I did when I had him on, but him and one of his buddies were following this set at like 22, 23-inch tracks right into this fucking thicket. And they had that big adult stuck in that thicket. He couldn't get out of that thicket without them hearing him. And right away what started happening is a littler one, about 8 feet tall, a little bit further down in the next thicket, started making a racket to get their attention. So they'd go over and try and look at him, and the big one could get away. And they weren't falling for it. They kept him trapped in that thicket until he finally popped up to take a look at Kreider. And Kreider held his camera up like this to get it over the top of the thicket, and got his fucking head popping up at about 12 feet looking at him.
See how sly they are?
Oh, yeah. They're sneaky as shit. That's why our job is so hard, man.
Well, they got to be or they'll get shot. They're smart enough to realize we can put a hurt on them from a distance. And if you're trying to avoid getting shot, you can avoid a camera too.
Yeah, that was a debate that was going on for quite a while, and amongst my circle of friends, you know, obviously they know what a gun is. Do they think a camera is a gun, or do they recognize the difference? And we've pretty much settled that one 100%. They know the difference. They know a camera isn't a gun, but they don't want to get filmed either.
Well, I study the history of Bigfoot sightings, and you get back into the Native Americans and the early settlers and stuff, and the Bigfoot were a lot more aggressive. I think after the United States and the Americas got settled, and the Bigfoot started realizing the power of some of these larger guns and stuff, I think they become a little bit more subdued. I think after the Americas were settled, the Bigfoots aren't as aggressive, and they're actually a lot more elusive. They had to adapt to, you know, the new people in the land that could, you know, shoot them from hundreds of yards away.
Right. Well, you know about the stone giants, the Janoskwa. That's a perfect example. They were having wars with the tribes over there where they lived, and they put this applique armor on themselves. They go rub their hair on pitch or pine sap or whatever until it was sticky, and then they'd roll around in the gravel and it would stick to their hair. And they do this 2 or 3 times. Well, they got a coat of armor on, rock armor, and you're trying to shoot a stone-tipped arrow or a spear, it ain't going in. Now they're proof from all the weapons you got, until the point where the natives started getting the boomsticks from us. This shit was going on, and then all of a sudden it stopped mysteriously, and there weren't any reports of Janoskwa wearing like rock armor anymore mysteriously.
Yeah,
I think there's a correlation.
Why wear it
there.
if it don't work?
Yeah, exactly. It's like it don't work anymore. They got weapons that can shoot through it, and we need to stay further away from these fuckers now. Let's not have wars with them so regularly, because now they can blast us, and it really hurts, you know. And don't forget the kind of guns they had back then either. They had smoothbore muskets that were like 69 caliber. Like you could take a 12-gauge slug and drop it down the barrel. So when you get hit with that, it's gonna fucking hurt.
Yeah, put a lot of grains of powder in that.
Oh yeah, whatever, as many as they want, 300-400, whatever. It might break the stock, but it'll definitely blow a hole through that Bigfoot in front of you.
Yeah, I got a Bigfoot sighting report that I put out there from Minnesota, where the guy is deer hunting with 12-gauge shotgun, and a lot of people are like immediately calling bullshit on the story, and I'm like, you haven't heard of people that hunt with slugs? I mean, a 12-gauge shotgun slug's gonna do a hell of a lot more damage than a 50 caliber rifle, especially from short to medium distance.
That's incredibly common in northern Minnesota, which, by the way, is where I grew up. And for two distinctly obvious reasons. One, first of all, is that it's very thick terrain with a lot of brush. So if you use a gun that's supersonic or something, that round hits a little stick or something, it pings right off of it. It won't go through it. The 12 gauge will plow right through it and keep going in a straight line. And the other thing is that because of how thick the cover is, you never get a long range shot at anything. You can't see it that fucking far away. It's 100 feet or less from you. 12 gauge slug works just fine, and that's why people like it. Double aught buck is the other one they like.
Aha. Makes sense to me now. Why he was using slugs.
Yep, because it plows right through that little thin brush. You know, you hit it with a 223 or something, it'll ping off. And you miss your target. And you 12 gauge goes right through it. Goes through the tree that's in the way too. Yeah, I had a lot of friends that used to hunt with 12 gauge, and some of them use 20 gauge with slugs too, which is also really good. Actually, that's almost a better deer round because it doesn't tear the deer up quite as bad, and it'll still plow through the brush and hit them. But anyway, we're actually not getting anything accomplished here other than having a fun conversation. So let's take a little quick 2-second break here so I can run to the bathroom and get a couple drags off of SIG, and then we'll start officially recording the show. How's that sound?
Oh, we haven't even officially started.
Well, I've been recording you, but we didn't do an intro or anything yet. So this is all like extra additional stuff that I can put together and go, hey, here's the 40 minutes of me and Kelly talking that you didn't hear on that show. 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. I'm good for a break.
Yeah, just leave it on. Meet me back here in like 5 minutes, and we'll just go from here.
Okay. Making a bunch of money doing this.
Oh fuck.
And I'm like, if you want to get a hobby that's going to make you money, this is not it. This keeps me broke. I mean,
I've never met a researcher an actual researcher that's making enough money to even cover the cost of their research, much less make bank.
Well, on average, I spend about 18 grand a year on expeditions and equipment, and so any of the pennies that YouTube's flipping me doesn't even cover my costs. I do this. It's a passion of love. You know, my past hobbies like hunting, fishing, Dungeons and Dragons, that used to suck up my money. And now it's the search for Bigfoot, you know, and if YouTube or my blog is going to flip me a few pennies, it goes right into the gas tank for the next expedition. And I feel like I get a rebate. Hey, you know, they bought us a tank of gas this month. Yeah. Yay. You know, that doesn't even come close to covering it, and the expenses of all of our equipment. I mean, I own 20 game cameras, and for me to set up a single game camera with everything I need, the SD card, the game camera, the batteries, I'm into that close to $200 per game camera. And those are my cheap cameras.
Yeah.
You know, the game cameras are the cheaper ones, but I have 20 of them out there year round.
I don't know if you saw the shows I did with William Lunsford, but he's the king of the game camera traps down there. He does the Folk Monster area. And it gets fucking expensive because some of these guys don't like game cameras in their area, and when they find them, they like destroy them, chew them up, do all kinds of weird shit with them, fling them 50 feet after they bash them against the tree. He's got the destroyed remains of a couple of them just for, what explain to me what did this? You know, see the peculiar bite marks?
I've had 2 game cameras chewed up, and I was able to retrieve the SD card and the SD card still didn't tell me what chewed it up. You know, I blame it on a bear, but I don't know what come up and chewed that thing up. And you know, they only take a couple of bites to destroy it. And I mean,
well, William had two of the
yeah.
most amazing game cam shots I've ever seen, and one of them was the Bigfoot apparently had grabbed the camera and was furiously biting it. So you got a great picture of its teeth from right in the middle of its teeth. And then the second picture, you're looking at it and you're going, what the hell am I looking at? Okay, it's night. There's woods there. There's teeth on top. There's teeth on the bottom. There's eye shine back in the woods. He had the camera in his mouth, aiming out, bit down on it, and it took a picture from the inside of his mouth looking out. And there's another one back in the woods. You can see the eye shine on the picture looking at him. Now that's the closest close-up you can get of a Sasquatch, a picture from inside its mouth.
My last game camera that got destroyed back in Sasquatch Canyon, whatever bit it, only bit it one time, and you can see the tooth marks on the top of the camera, and then the bottom tooth went right in the infrared trigger. And a lot of people, including me, believe that Bigfoot can see the IR trigger like you and I would see a normal light. And it's kind of a laser that comes out. So, you know, I'm thinking, did it come up, you know, sneak up behind the tree, reach around and bite on that bugger right on the IR deal because it's annoying. It's in its area. It's actually the one that is facing. I have it facing one of their structures.
Oh, okay.
It's actually. I took Les Stroud to two of the structures back there, and that structure, he and I, we tent camped. We backpacked in there and we tent camped probably less than 100 yards from that structure. But that's the structure that the game camera got bit right through the infrared trigger. So I blame a bear, but I don't know.
You don't know for sure. Yeah.
No, I don't have any evidence of what did it.
Me and my other friends are pretty much on exactly the same page that you're on. They can see further into the infrared spectrum than we can, which works to their advantage being nocturnal. You can still see anything that's warm during the day, and it gives you a real clear image of what you're looking at, no matter how black it is. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, they have other sensory perception, and they can probably smell the plastic. When the camera goes off, it makes noise. And then how long does it take before it quits making noise again? They observe that. And Williams caught him playing games with his game cams where they'll throw something in front of it and trigger it. And there'd be like 2 or 3 images, and you're actually catching the object flying in front of the camera that's triggering it. And then there's like blank ones where they figured out what the cycle time is on the camera. They throw a rock to set the camera off, and then while it's resetting, they walk in front of it.
Well, some of the fastest trigger speeds out there, if I'm walking at a brisk pace, I can trigger the camera and be out of the frame before it takes
before it goes on. Yeah.
So
that's what they're doing. It's observation. They're seeing how fast this thing is and watching what it's doing. It's like, oh, we can walk right in front of it. We just got to, do X or Y, depending on the situation. If they're close enough, they just like run right in front of it. By the time it goes off, you catch a little strand of hair on the far side of the frame, where they're running off the frame.
Yeah, and I can smell those cameras myself. I can smell those cameras from a couple of feet away. I can smell the camera. I can smell the batteries, and I'm human, and I have really shitty senses compared to the animal world. And so we had a elk lick the crap out of one of our cameras, and this is back before we would service them. We used to rotate them in and out. We used to go grab an old camera and put a new one out there, and now we just change batteries and SD cards and leave it there. But that's back when we did it, and I brought that home, and Jenny's like, oh my God, it stinks. Here, give that to me. I'm going to clean it. And I'm like, hell no. I was like, a Bigfoot's going to think it's an elk. We're not washing that camera. We're going to leave it stinky elk breath.
Yeah. Good idea. Good idea. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the episode where I had Rich Soul on talking about the MUC7E DNA studies and stuff that they're doing over there. but that's the one marker they've got that doesn't match any other known genetically sampled higher hominids that could very potentially be a marker for Bigfoot. So if you get like slobber on an apple or something, you can test it for MUC7E. And if it comes up, then there's really only one option available for who it probably is. And this will work for eDNA. Environmental DNA testing will pick it up too. So if, they took a poop in the little stream over there. Yeah. So that's, more stuff for us to all keep our eyes on. Well, let's do an official start here. I'm sure I'll be chopping a bunch of pieces out of what we've already done and putting them in there anyway.
All right.
Welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. And we're back with another awesome episode. This one much more awesome than the regular episodes because this one has the incredibly awesome Kelly Shaw from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization finally on the show with us. The man, the myth, the legend, the guy who went out in the woods with Les Stroud and came back again. Yes, he was on Survivor Man Bigfoot too. I've been a fan myself of Kelly and his work for a long, long time. He's got his own spots all over the place, Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization, and he's on YouTube, and he has his own website, and go check it all out. This guy is like, we can't even figure out when he sleeps because he turns out so many videos, and they're all really damn good. He does catch stuff. He gets out there and camps right where they're at, does the actual boots on the ground, butt in the field recon that so many of the other so-called researchers don't seem to do. And I give him extra credit because a lot of guys will go out there and do a walk around and stuff, or they'll even do a night recon or something, but very few of them will actually go camp. And that's what separates the men from the boys right there. If you're not really willing to go camp where they're at, then yeah, maybe you should get a different hobby. But with that, welcome to the show with a gigantic buildup, Kelly Shaw. Nice to have you on finally, bud.
Hi, Duke. It's really nice to be on World Bigfoot Radio.
I've been pestering Kelly for years to come on here, and he's so damn busy all the time, it's impossible to get him. Hey, can you come on next week? No, I'm going to be over here doing research on this sighting that was here a couple weeks ago.
It's a passion. I like being on the road chasing Bigfoot or chasing Bigfoot sightings.
So now, how did you get started in this? You knew about this as a potential actual creature from the time you were little, right?
Yeah, that's right. My grandfather would tell me and my cousins and brothers and all that about his Bigfoot sighting he had in the 1930s in Mount St. Helens, and a daytime sighting, and they were like 20, 30 feet away from him, three of them. He was fishing, got uneasy, could smell some stench he's never smelt before, and then he saw him behind him at the tree line watching him fish. And I don't know the name of the lake. I just quizzed a bunch of my uncles and dad a few months ago, and they're just like, we don't know, and we don't even know if the lake that he was on even exists any longer, because it blew its top in 1980.
Yeah, the lake could be completely gone at this point.
But when he saw him, his flight reaction kicked in, but there was nowhere to run. They were blocking his only way out. His other option was to jump in the lake and swim.
Oh God.
And he just looked at him and thought, I'm just gonna keep acting normal, doing what I'm doing. Maybe they'll go away, and they wouldn't go away. Well, he had caught a couple of fish out of this lake, and finally it dawned on him, maybe they're here for my fish. And so he threw them back there. And my grandpa was a big man. I got the short genes in the family. I wish I would, but my grandpa was like 6'3", and he was a young adult in the 1930s, and he said the biggest one out of the three, which was a little taller than him, he's guessing the small one was 6'4", the tall one was 8 foot, and the other one was 7 foot. Well, when he threw the fish back to him, it landed like 10 feet in front of the group. He said the smallest one went running up, grabbed it, and took it back to the group. And he's like, oh, they are here for my fish. He threw another one back, and same thing. Little one come up, grabbed it, went back to the group. And he had a few more fish in his fishing bag. And he threw another one back. Little one come back, got it, ran back to the group. Well, then he caught another fish, reeled it in, and decided to throw that one back. This would have been the fourth fish. He turned around, and they were gone. So I guess they took a fish each and left. And then he split out of there. There was 5 of them. And it was an annual fishing trip that they did to this lake that they had to backpack into in Mount St. Helens in the 1930s. And he went to the other guy that went fishing. The other 3 guys went berry picking. They always went during berry season, because he says it was such a long hike in there. They brought minimal food, so they depended on getting berries and fish to sustain them while they were out there on their trip. Well, he went and found the other guy fishing and told him what happened and said, we need to get the hell out of here. And they went back to camp. When they got back to camp, the guys that went berry picking, the other 3 guys, they were already there. And they started explaining these 3 creatures. Well, they didn't know what to call them. It wasn't in the pop culture. It wasn't big time in the news. They didn't know what they saw. It was a monster to them all. But they saw the same 3. So I'm guessing it's the same 3, because I doubt there's 2 sets of 3 Bigfoot wandering around in the same area. Well, so out of 5 of them, 4 of them seen them. My grandpa and 3 of them. And the other guy fishing didn't. But he was motivated to get out of there too, because of how the others were going on. And so they hightailed it out of there, packed up camp, left, and they never returned to the area again. They still did an annual backpacking trip, but they chose a new area in Washington. So that story, I pestered my grandpa all the time to tell me that story, and it got me into it. I started reading all the books I could about it back then, watching all the shows, and it was just always a passion of mine. And I always thought, when I grow up, I'm going to go look for the creature. And I had it in my head that I had to come out to the Pacific Northwest. Well, as I got older, there would be newspaper clippings, newspaper and on the news right where I lived, the Wasatch Front, the Rocky Mountains, where people were seeing them. And eventually, some of my friends, some of my relatives seen it in the area. And, when I became an adult, I was like, I don't have to go to the Pacific Northwest. Bigfoot's right here in the Rocky Mountains. So as a hobby, several times a year, I would go camping in Bigfoot sighting locations. I wouldn't tell my girlfriends at the time. I wouldn't tell my wife or my kids why I chose those places to camp. My kids know now, though. My daughter's like, hey, when you used to take us to Tony Grove and Franklin Basin, I watch your videos. There's Bigfoot sightings there. You were taking us there because of Bigfoot. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, why didn't you say anything? It's like, I didn't want you guys to be scared. And, so I didn't tell them.
Good answer, Dad.
But I would tell them, hey, there's black bears in there. You guys don't go wandering off alone. You guys stay in pairs. Let me know if you're going to leave camp for any reason. But yeah, matter of fact, my daughter, when and I didn't talk about Bigfoot when my kids were little because I didn't want to scare them of the forest. But when she was like 7 years old, um, out by Henry's Lake, we were camping out there. And one of the days we went to Yellowstone. It's only 30 miles from Yellowstone. We decided to go Yellowstone for the day on our camping trip. And I stopped at a random spot to go pee and jumped in the car. And we took off. And as we're driving, my daughter's like, "Who is that watching you pee?" I'm like, "What do you mean watching me pee? Was nobody around." And she's like, "Yeah." She goes, "There was some big hairy guy standing looking at you over this tree." And I'm like, "What?" And she's 7 years old, and me and my wife know that she wasn't, telling us some fib. Well, I did a U-turn. I'm thinking, "Oh my God, it's freaking Bigfoot." And we went back to where I peed, and I'm asking my daughter, I'm like, "Where was it?" And she's showing me the tree. Well, in order for its head to be over the tree like she said it was to watch me pee, the tree hitting it right there, this thing had to be like 9 feet tall. And so it damn well wasn't a person. And I couldn't find any tracks. I just seen where the grass was smashed down and everything. So,
Yeah.
and after that, I'm like, "You saw a Bigfoot," because I don't know anybody that's 9 feet tall, covered head to toe in hair. So that's
No,
pretty neat.
yeah, very. You know, in watching your channel, if people go back and review your content and stuff, they're going to see a lot of interesting things. And one of my favorite ones is where you guys are out doing night patrol, and you're walking down this trail, and you go around this little curve. And as you're going around it, there's one standing right there, and you can see his eye shine. And he had to be at least 9 feet tall. He was a big boy too.
That was Sasquatch Canyon, and we caught his eye shine on infrared. And so I was with Mike Hansen, and this guy's got balls of steel. He's a big time big game hunter and everything. And I talk him into going bigfooting with me once in a while. Well, we were back in one of the hot spots in Sasquatch Canyon, and he kept on insisting on blackout on our night hike. He kept on, you know, he didn't use his headlamp. He kept on asking me to shut mine off and be quiet and all that. And we had an infrared camera, so that's all we had was infrared light. And me looking at the viewfinder on the camera, it dilates my eyes, and so I'm tripping and stumbling around. So he led the way. So he led the blind. I was the blind managing the camera and everything. Well, we kept on getting wood knocks and hearing vocalizations. And about the time that happened, we kept smelling something, and we could hear something walking on the rocks around us. There's a lot of shell-like rock that comes off the cliffs of those canyons that come right down into the forest. I mean, we were in thick forest, but we're still kind of walking on shell rock. Well, he was keeping us out of that to not trip me up. And anyway, we didn't notice until like a week later when I was reviewing the footage at home to put the hiking video together. I saw that, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And Mike actually heads right towards the eye shine where it's looking over us from the cover of a tree. And that thing had to give way. Otherwise, Mike would have walked right into the chest of that thing. And so, my suspicion is it's a Bigfoot because of what was going on, the area it is, us hearing it walk around us, the whoops, the wood knocks, the smell. I really think it was a Bigfoot because I don't know a mountain lion that's 8-9 feet tall that could look over that tree at us like this thing was. So yeah, that was kind of creepy in hindsight, that it was just it was just like 10-15 feet away from us. And I saw the eyes zip to one side real quick as we walked towards it, and I think it was thinking to itself, "Oh shit, they're coming right at me," and it had to give way. Otherwise, Mike would have walked right into it. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh my God.
And we weren't seeing that well. It was dark as hell. You know, so people that watching it, you know, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You know, that those IR cameras and stuff, yeah, they see real well, but we weren't seeing a damn thing.
Yeah. Well, I get that in my research area. Even, you know, we don't walk around filming at night. We don't have IR gear or anything. We just stay at the camp and then they come and visit. During the day, we walk around, find their tracks and structures and stuff. And the more we're filming, the more you catch them on video because they're following you around. And you, man, sometimes they're 10, 15, 20 feet away from you. You don't see them at all. Then you look at the video and you're like, how the hell did I not see that? I walked literally right past them.
Oh, yeah.
How did I not notice it? This is during the day. You're out there looking for them. You would think maybe some kind of pattern recognition would kick in. The camera's picking them up, but you're like, derp, I don't know. I'm, you know, Mr. Magoo, I'm going to walk into a tree now, derp. So, yeah, they're just so stealthy. Even if you know what you're looking for and you're out there looking for them, half the time you won't see them.
Yeah, my daytime sighting that I had a couple of months ago, that only my second sighting I've ever had in my life, you know, that just instilled in me how well they can follow you around, watch you, and you don't even know they were there. If I hadn't looked up in my rear view mirror, I would have never known that creature
was right
was there. Yeah, I don't know if I told that story on this, but
go ahead.
I've only ever had two Bigfoot sightings that were clear. I mean, I think I've seen the creature several times, but these are the
filmed them several times too, but you're just not willing to admit it's Bigfoot. I know how you roll.
Yeah, well, I want to see it with my eyes clear enough that I can 100% say that was a Bigfoot, and that's only ever happened to me twice. Just a few months ago, the end of August, and then in 2013, mid-July. It's only 2 times I've saw it clearly enough that I can say without a doubt that's what it was. And this one was standing behind us. Jenny and I were going on the top of Monte Cristo to a place where there's some freshwater springs, where we know 7 people personally that have had Bigfoot sightings there over the years. And so I keep some game cameras in the area, and we were going up to service them, and both of us had to go bathroom bad, and no bathrooms up there. So I just stopped on a random dirt road I've never been on. First opportunity, pulled off. I stepped on next to my truck and I go pee. Jenny goes, hides in the tree, and I waited for her to come back. Don't want her off by herself, so I keep an eye on her. She comes back. We get in the truck together, and I turn it on and put it in reverse, and I look in the rear view mirror, and standing behind us was a Bigfoot that I figured out was well over 7 feet tall. But the first thing that my mind wants to think is that's a person. And so that's my initial reaction is I said to Jenny, and I got the creep factor. I'm like, that guy was watching us pee, you know, and, you know, creepy bastard. So I say to Jenny, I'm like, oh my God, there's a dude back there. And as soon as I said it, that's when it absorbed in my head. That was no dude. And, you know, it was over 7 foot tall, dark brown, head to toe, Bigfoot. And bam, it runs that direction out of the frame of my rear view mirror and window into the forest. And bam, and Jenny could tell by the look on my face, and I snatched the camera, and she's like, oh my God, it was Bigfoot. You know, she could just tell by my reaction that it sunk in what it was. So I ripped the door open and I go running after it. I was just in, I don't know, I think the adrenaline was going, that I wasn't thinking about my safety. And I go running up to this log it was standing behind, and I could clearly see the gap between its thighs and its upper thighs over this log that was about 35 feet behind us. And I get up to the log, and that's when I realized how big it was. My belly button hits the top of the log, and I could see a gap between its thighs. So it's at least 2 feet, maybe bigger than me in that region. And of course, it was wider than me and everything. And then we immediately start finding Bigfoot tracks in some of the soft parts of the earth right there. It had rained the day before, so
Oh,
the
sweet.
ground
So you
was
had
kind of
soft
soft.
ground conditions. Nice.
But we tracked him for about an hour and actually found another set of tracks. So there was more than one. And we tracked it to private property from public land. And there was no need for us to go on to this private property because we lost and picked up the track several times. And when we found it at private property, it had stepped over the fence and it looked like it was effortless. I mean, this fence hit me probably the lower chest area. It stepped
Oh
over it
God.
no problem from the private property onto public land,
Right.
and so we found where it had come across probably before it come up and watched us, but but the sun was going down and it was finally and a storm rolling in. It was finally time to leave, but yeah, we found enough Bigfoot tracks right there where it was watching us and tracked it around that
Oh God.
100% it was a Bigfoot. But your mind's used to seeing people, and I'm
Right.
sure there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings out there where someone will see it down the river, and even though it's black, dark brown, red from head to toe, people's minds will register a person, and that's what my mind registered, was person for a split second, and then I realized that's no person. So that was unexpected, crazy,
Wow. Very cool
but
though. You got to see another one real close, and there for sure it is.
uh,
You know, I was talking about the misidentification where pattern recognition, you see something bipedal walking around right away, you want to think it's a human because that's all we're used to seeing doing that.
yes,
The reverse is true too, because you know, they'll go on all fours sometimes. And in
that's
the same
creepy.
year that Mount St. Helens decided to have a hiccup and blow up, I was actually backpacking around the West with my cousin. And one of the places that we were at was the Wasatch Mountains of Utah. And we were right on the border of Wyoming and decided to hike upriver, go north. And we went up there for about 5 days and had our tent run over by a moose and all kinds of stupid stuff. Got rained on a bunch. But at one point, the river was shallow enough that I could actually walk across it. So I went over to the far side and was going down up the far side, upriver, as he was going upriver on the side we had originally been on. And you know, I was getting grimy and everything, so I decided I'd go down to the river and stick my head in the river and wash my hair off. And while I'm doing that, all of a sudden I get this peculiar sensation that there's something behind me. About 30 feet behind me is where the brush line starts. And it's only about 15, 20 feet deep. And then there's a really steep hillside right behind it, but it's still wooded. So you can't really see that well into it. Well, I just get this feeling there's something behind me. So I pick my head up and look, and right across the river is my cousin waving his arms frantically and screaming. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You know, so I turn around and I look behind me, and again, I don't see anything. And I turn back and look at him, and he's motioning, get across the river to where he's at. And I'm like, I don't, you know, and the river's loud, so I can't really hear what he's trying to yell at me. I could just, he's over there screaming and waving his arms. So I go back up down river and go across to where he's at. And when I get over there, I ask him, what was that all about? And he goes, there was something sneaking up on you. Well, you were washing your hair. It came down that steep hillside, and it went right to the edge of the wood line and was watching you. And that's
Yeah,
when you turned
you're
around.
preoccupied. That's when they
Yeah,
sneak.
exactly. And that's when you turned around, he said. Like you sensed it was behind you or something, and you turned around and looked, and then you turned back, and I was over there yelling and screaming, trying to let it know that there's somebody else watching. And he goes, in between when you turned around and looked back to me, it turned around and went back up the hill again. And I said, well, what the hell was it, a bear? And he goes, no, that wasn't a bear. And I said, well, what else could it be? It was on all fours. To be that big, what was it, a buffalo? And he goes, no, it wasn't a buffalo. No buffalo could go up and down that steep hillside like that, not make noise especially. And well, what was it? And he goes, I don't know. Well, he doesn't believe there's such a thing as Bigfoot. But, you know, here it is, sneaking 1980, Wasatch Mountains, Utah, one sneaking up on me. And shortly after that, we were over in the Bighorn Mountains and had one shake our damn tent while we were over there. So they're all over the West, man. All you got to do is get your butt out in the woods. You'll run into them.
Yeah, there's a population every corner of the woods in the Rocky Mountains, Pacific Northwest, and we both know that from experience and following the sighting reports.
Yep. Yeah, having them sneaking up on you when you're trying to wash your hair was pretty creepy. My cousin was really freaked out. He couldn't figure out what it was because, it's like it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a buffalo, it's on all fours, it's gigantic. What the hell am I looking at? And he never got a clear view of it. It was behind the screen of vegetation enough that all he could see was like a rough outline of this thing.
Well, something more common than a Bigfoot, much more common, a mountain lion.
Yeah.
Just in the northern part of Utah, the DNR estimates is there's a population of 5,000, and I've probably only seen a mountain lion in the wild 3 times in my entire life, and they're sneaking behind you all the time. If people realized how often a mountain lion sneaks up on them, observes them, and then trots off, they probably never go in the woods again. It happens all the time. And I didn't realize how many mountain lions were out there and how active they were until I started my game camera projects about 11 years ago. I keep 20 game cameras in Bigfoot sighting hotspots year around, and I'm constantly catching mountain lions on them, a few bears, and then Sasquatch Canyon. Jenny and I used to do night hikes there all the time. We have like a trap line of cameras, and just for fun, and plus Bigfoot's nocturnal, so it's nice to get out there at night and hike around with your infrared cameras. We used to go into the closest camera, which is like a mile hike. So we hike in a mile, hike out at night, and we just service that one camera. And then the next day, we go the
do
5,
the further
6,
afield ones.
we go the 5-6 miles in and do the rest of them. Well, luckily enough, a couple of years ago, we had 3 of our friends that aren't into Bigfooting, but they just happened to be with us that time. 3 guys, all bigger than me, and all of them are lifelong woodsmen, hunters, big game hunters. They don't think they're scared of shit, but they were squealing like girls that night. I got it all on camera. We got in there, and I see eye shine up on this little mountaintop, and then I catch the silhouette of the side profile of a mountain lion, and I'm like, hey, there's a mountain lion, and everybody puts their spotlights on it and stuff, and it disappears. And then a little while later, it covers half the distance. It's half that distance to us, and this time we can see it pacing back and forth, flipping its ears and everything. And the 3 guys with me, they're shitting their pants. I'm the only one armed, and I just have bear mace. Jenny's usually armed, and these guys are usually armed, but for some reason everybody left their firearms back at camp, and so nobody's armed, and they're wanting to go back. And I shit you not, they're squealing like girls, and I'm like the camera's just right there, let's just service it and get out of here. And they're like, we should go now, and we're yelling at this mountain lion, and it's the big male. I've got him several times on there. He's like 200 pounds. They say they don't get that big in Utah.
Oh, yes, they do. They get bigger than that.
This one's 200 pounds, and he's muscly. Well, anyway, we get up to the camera, and he covered half the distance again, pacing back and forth. And we're yelling at him, and he doesn't seem to give a crap. Doesn't even give a crap. There's 5 adults yelling at him, spotlighting him, and anyway, I hurried and serviced the camera where everybody covers me, and then we got out of there. We never did see him again on our way out. But after that, I don't hike back there alone anymore. I used to go during the daytime alone. I won't go alone anymore. And Jenny and I aren't comfortable hiking back there at night. We want another couple of guys with us that are armed after that incident. I mean, I'm not afraid of the Bigfoot. I mean, I should be, but it's the mountain lion, the bear, and the moose that really worry me, especially at night.
I agree with you. There's only one of those hazards in my favorite research area because, there's moose there, especially now that the local wolf population has been knocked down a bit. There's quite a few more moose there than there was a few years ago. But that whole valley is all just packed full of elk, moose, 3 different kinds of deer, blah, 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 any kind of prey animal you can think of. And we never see it. Never see any signs of mountain lions or bears there. Never. And, we were talking about that before we were doing the recording for the show here. And you've got an area like that too.
Hotspot, I'll bet.
Yeah, it's like you can walk around and you can find elk and moose tracks. Practically every time you put your foot down, there's a deer, elk, or moose track there. And you'll find Bigfoot tracks, but you don't find any bear tracks. You don't find any cat tracks. You don't find any wolf tracks. There's no other predators in that valley for some reason. And we even know where their kids hang out. There's this one ridge line. You can go up there and find juvie tracks all the time. So that's why there's, no predators there.
Yeah, the Bigfoot's keeping the predators out.
Exactly.
I do think in any given area, the Bigfoot is the alpha predator, and he lets his presence known. And I think the bears stay out of the area. There's this place in Yellowstone Canyon, Utah, and it's in the UNAs, and the UNAs is the epicenter of Bigfoot activity in Utah. It spreads out from there, but in the UNAs, that particular area, where there's several structures that's on our structure map overlay that we study. We put them on our map overlay project. This is Jenny's idea, by the way that she started in 2013. The big old log structures are the ones we're interested in, that have no rhyme or reason, that are relocated logs thrown up into host trees and stuff. We put them on a GPS map overlay, GPS them, and we try to go back and check on them at least once a year. And there's been a couple of them where we've seen that they've added to them, and even found on the ground not too far away the log that they picked up the indentation and shoved up there, and this is off trail and everything. Well, this place in Yellowstone Canyon, the mountainside kind of aims at the sun, and there's like 6 types of berries there. Wild strawberries, raspberries, thimbleberries, Oregon grapes, huckleberries. I mean, you name it, all kinds of berries there. And and we all know that bears love berries. Perfect place for bear habitat. And then there's these mountaintop springs there, so the animals or the Bigfoot don't have to come off the mountain to get water. It's right there. Food sources. Well, these structures surround this area, these so-called Bigfoot structures that we're studying, and lots of game. Well, something that we've noticed over the years of studying it is we find Bigfoot tracks inside the structure area, all kinds of game animals, but we never find bear tracks. And this is a big time black bear area, all the resources for a bear, but for some reason they're not going in the structure area. So are they afraid of the Bigfoot, or the Bigfoot keeping them out of the area? You get out of this area, the next mountain over, and you see where the bears are all
over the place.
You see where the bears are hacking up the trees, and
they got rubs for their back, and
they're scat and everything. So it's like the Bigfoot claim that area, and the bear know to stay out. That's that's Bigfoot's food.
And that's pretty much what we found to be the case in the Valley of the Giants, where we're doing our research every summer. It's about a 3 by 6 mile valley right in the middle of the mountain range, base at about 6,500 feet, with water all over it, lots of little rivers and wet spots, moose, blah, 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 blah. And you never see any kind of predator track. As a matter of fact, the closest one we ever found, I had Grandy K. Manyazi up here, and we were walking the ridge line just outside of the valley. And we had found a Bigfoot trail. I shit you not. There wasn't any other game tracks on it. And it was just the width of their foot, and we kept finding their tracks on it. So we're following it up this ridge line. When we get up to the top of the ridge line, there's a soft spot on the right-hand side of the trail. And I said, "Caveman, what's that right there?" And he looks at it and he goes, "That's a bear track, big one." And yeah, it's a front footprint. It's about 8.5 inches across.
That's a big one.
Which direction is it going? And he just gets this grin and he goes, "He's getting the hell away from this valley."
That sounds like a grizzly bear track. That's huge.
Yeah, exactly. It's a grizzly, but yeah, and the point here being that that grizzly track was going directly away from the valley. He was right on the edge of it, and he came across that Bigfoot trail and went, "Oh, screw this!" Whoop, right out of there. So yeah, that was some fun there. Some of the other stuff that you've turned out has been pretty friggin' amazing too. I know you did some recons around the ghost town where you guys have caught stuff on camera there that you didn't realize at the time, and then other people would find it afterwards and go, "Hey, there's one over here peeking at you through the window of this building," and
Oh,
stuff
Deadwood. Oh
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Oh yeah.
You've done a bunch of good stuff over there. Another one that I really liked is where you guys were just filming this far side of a canyon, and there's this gigantic one standing next to a tree, and you're like, "What the hell am I looking at over here?" And then you came back with Derek and had him try and get into position and find the spot where it was again and everything. And that sucker was huge.
That was
Whatever it was gigantic, and it wasn't there when you came back.
that was Lost Creek, and that was a day or two after the guy had the Bigfoot sighting. And God, that was just an amazing investigation. I got a hold of excuse me, um, this guy Clint Wrenches gets a hold of me and says, this guy got a hold of me. He just saw Bigfoot, blah 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 blah, and the guy saw it just before dark. And so we come in the next day, and he got Todd Strong, and I know everybody's got their opinion about BFRO, but Todd Strong's the BFORO investigator in the area, and so and Clint got a hold of him. So R.M.S.O and BFRO show up to investigate the guy's sighting. And what happened is he was fishing at Lost Creek Reservoir with his girlfriend, and then they decided to go on a hike after he was done fishing, and they just went up a draw. They hike up the draw, and they hiked in quite a ways, and they hiked past the spot where everything took place, and there was nothing there when they hiked past, but they get into the draw and they can hear a deer in distress. So they hike back down out of the draw. It was behind them, and there was a doe laying there dying in distress. She was trying to give birth, and
Oh,
and so he laid down there, and this guy's a cattle rancher and everything, and he's used to helping animals give birth that are having a problem. So he tried helping this doe, and he gets down there and tries pulling the fetus out, and it sloughs off. This fetus has been dead inside of her for probably a couple of days, and
oh,
he can't get it out. So he knows this doe's gonna die. So he lays up at the head of the doe and he starts comforting her, trying to give her comfort as she's passing away. And his girlfriend's like, "What is that?" And he looks up on the mountain, and about 70 yards away, a giant Bigfoot's staring at him. And I think the calls of the dying doe brought the Bigfoot in. Maybe the Bigfoot was coming in for an easy meal or something.
mhm.
So it's down there looking at them, and then they both look up at it. And when it realizes they're both looking at it, it turns around, walks up the rest of the mountain, which didn't take very long, and went and disappeared over the ridge. So the next day we come in, and and I already had the story. They'd already told us the story. We show up to investigate, and they take us to the doe, and the doe's laying there dead. Nothing has touched it, and the fetus and everything, all that's going on. And he shows us what's going on, and I don't know what's up with the BFRO guy, but he takes off some other direction up the mountain, and I think he was trying to beat us to the evidence, and I think he misunderstood the guy, and he took off the wrong way. And so we had the guy stay in his spot and get us up to where he saw the Bigfoot. Well, on our way up to find the Bigfoot, we found what looked like a bedding spot, and then we saw where the Bigfoot had put its hand down a couple of times.
Nice.
So this Bigfoot may have been laying in his bedding spots when they hiked by, And then when the doe started freaking out, he got up and ended up in the position where they saw him. But yeah, we found his tracks and everything, threw a drone up in the air and all that, and so everything come together that what this guy was telling us, we found in the tracks, we found in the handprints, the deer and everything. Well, a couple years later, Jenny's nail technician knows that Jenny's into Bigfooting and watches our videos, and she's like, she like starts telling Jenny, she's like, hey, my boyfriend come face to face with the Bigfoot last week, only 10 miles away from that Lost Creek area.
Wow.
Hard Scrabble. Yeah, they were camping along Hard Scrabble Creek, and at nighttime he went into the willows to pee and come face to face with the Bigfoot. And that very same area 10 years prior, one of my friend's nephews, Mike's the guy, the balls of steel. his nephew was having a graduation party, and a rancher let them stay at his cabin because he really liked the kid that worked for him. Let him stay in the cabin. Well, anyway, just after dark in June, the 1st of June, they decided to roast some hot dogs at the fire, and he went down into the willows at Hard Scrabble Creek to whittle some willows to stab the hot dogs. And he gets down into the willows, and a Bigfoot's laying down in him. He didn't notice the Bigfoot till it stood up.
Oh God.
It stood up, and it was at least 9 feet tall, and it was less than 20 feet away. And he says he could see the colors of its hands, some of the skin through its hair. It was so close to him, and he could see its junk, so he knew it was a male. And this Bigfoot didn't look directly at him, actually acted like he wasn't even there, although it did know he was there because it stood up when he come up on it. And it had to actually take a few steps towards him to go off in the willows the way it wanted to go. So it come a little bit closer before it left. And the creepy thing is, it was him and 3 friends just up on the embankment. That Bigfoot was laying in the willows, watching them have their little shindig. So it's just crazy. 2 sightings right there, and then that Lost Creek one with the deer, 10 miles away. So it's just fun doing this kind of thing when these reports start coming into you from unrelated groups, and you start, these people, some of these sightings, 10 years difference, 3 years difference. I just don't think it's a figment of these people's imagination, especially when we show up and start finding the footprints and the handprints, and it really puts in perspective, this happened, this guy's telling us the truth.
Yeah. So when did you guys get that video of the one across the canyon from you? Which video was that on?
That was Lost Creek, and that was probably in 2014. I'm guessing that happened right around there.
That's pretty spectacular. I remember you guys went through a lot of effort to try and get Derek to the same spot so you could get a comparison, and you're having a hell of a time finding it. You went through a lot of effort doing it.
And the guy that we sent over there to get him in position, he's not a Bigfooter. He's a hunter, and he just comes with us once in a while, kind of grudgingly. And and when he come back over, we just couldn't get him into the right position, and we kept showing up about the same time of day so the shadows and stuff would match. I mean, we spent a lot of time there trying to find this creature, and it may very well have been what we caught on video watching us doing the investigation. But the guy that we sent over there and tried to get into position, he comes back and we're like, did you find any footprints? And he's like, no, but I found this really weird log formation. And he starts explaining these giant logs shoved up into a living host tree and stuff. And we're like, yeah, that's so it may be a marked territory of a Bigfoot that was hanging out there.
Could well be. You know, we were talking about structures earlier, and we've been really fortunate to actually see them rearranging them and stuff. We found right on the far end of the ridge line where they let the little ones play. They had a giant X structure up there, 6 stories tall, made out of lodgepole pines. So we knew where this spot was, and we came back to it again a couple of years, and then the third year we came back, it wasn't there anymore. The center tree that had the Y in the top of it that both the side pieces were through was still standing, but both the side pieces were now laying on the ground in a neat little pile. And we went, okay, why did they disassemble this? What's going on? Mike, go check down the edge of the canyon, because the year previously, if you go down the ridge line down into the canyon below it, there was a smaller X structure. Go see if that's still down there. So he went down there and he yells, you guys need to come and see this. So we walked right across the top of the ridge line over to the side of it where you could see down to where he was. And the X structure from the year before had now been converted into a 5-story tall teepee. And then we came there the next month, and they had taken a live 40-foot pine tree that was next to it and bent the top of it underneath the teepee. And we had the video from the month before to prove that wasn't there the month before. So it's really fun when you can find these things, and they're building them, and you get to get it, you know, because you keep going back and looking at it.
Yeah, in Yellowstone Canyon, Utah, and Sasquatch Canyon in Utah. All the structures that we take seriously that are on our GPS map overlay project, we have only ever seen 2 structures added to, and that's in those 2 areas. And not only did we see that a new log's been in place, we scour around and we can find where the deadfall was actually laying. And I know there's a lot of naysayers out there that are like, oh yeah, they just fell into place. That's wind, that's weather that made that structure. Well, I just don't, I've never seen any type of wind that can pick up a 200-pound log and place it in a perfect placement in a teepee structure. And so, you know, something with some muscle power had to physically pick that up and to put it into place, and just no evidence of a person doing that. And I don't know about you, but I can't put a 200-pound log into place by myself. I would need several of my strong buddies, some pulleys and some ropes to get it up into these positions. And it just makes no rhyme or reason. And these structures are on steep mountainside angles.
Yep. Let me give you an example that we found up in my research area, which is how we got started up there. Because one of my friends who's a researcher from Idaho was just driving through this pass, and he's looking across the river, and there's a little embankment about 30 feet long on the far side of this steep little gorge going down to this river. There's this X structure on it, and it's freaking gigantic. It's 2 entire lodgepole pines with all the branches and the bark stripped off. And he's going, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? So he pulls over, he wades across the river, he gets up there and looks at them. Neither one of them is from there. They had both been moved into position. One of them, there was a log laying on the ground that had a Y in it, and the butt end of it was in there so it wouldn't skid. And then the other one was laying hooked across that one. And so here's this X structure, it's 50 feet tall, and they've moved both of these logs into position from somewhere else. There's no roads or anything over there. You would need a logging helicopter to do this. Now, I talked to local loggers about that and showed them that picture, and I said, how much do these weigh? How big does a lodgepole pine this big? What does it weigh? And they said they weighed about 3 tons each. So it's not 200 pounds. It's what can pick up 3 tons and walk around with it and put it into a position. Yeah, way beyond human capacity. There's no way you could have a team of 30 guys there, and you'd need so much other equipment to do it still. It would be obvious that humans did it.
Yeah, and it shows the intelligence of that creature. Like you were talking about the perfect crook in a log to help form the tops of these structures and stuff. I don't know how many of those I've found.
Exactly.
And, the coincidence of one of those flipping up off the ground up there and 2 more logs going into the crook and then being stacked perfectly. There's no rhyme, reason. It's not a coincidence. Something's
No.
purposely putting these together.
And the other thing that me and Kelly have both found and, filmed plenty of times is, okay, let's assume there was some kind of a freak microburst that grabbed a whole bunch of logs and twisted them into an asterisk structure 30 feet high. How did those upside down ones get in there? How often have you found upside down trees and upside down logs and stuff in these structures? Okay, explain to me how
the roots are up there. And
yeah, exactly. How is this tree doing a cartwheel and getting stuck halfway through? We found an entire upside down X structure that had roots up both sides. They're entire trees, upside down X structure. How does that happen naturally?
Yeah, I always have thought it was an alpha male showing to rivals and trying to impress females my size and strength for being able to build those, and also doing the high 8, 9, 10, 12 foot snap offs as big a sapling as they can break. Something that we found in Yellowstone Canyon one year was one of these really impressive structures being destroyed. And I take it that there may have been a rival male that come into the area, and that was his challenge to the resident alpha male by wrecking one of his structures. And that structure since hasn't ever been rebuilt, but none of the other structures have been destroyed. So I don't know what went on in that area, if it was a power struggle, but I mean, that's why we do the study, trying to find the answers to these structures. I know there's tribes in the Pacific Northwest that say that these territorial structures has a log for every family member in their clan.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two places that we've seen that they've been added, maybe they had
babies
if the Indians in these areas are right.
Yeah.
Don't know yet, but it's a worthy cause to keep an eye on these areas, especially their Bigfoot sighting hotspots, and it's motivation for us to get our butts in there and check them at least once a year.
Interestingly, we're on the same page as you are. We think the X structures are big territorial markers. There's other researchers over on the East Coast that think when they put an X on the ground, it's actually like a welcome mat. And Alaskan researcher told me that according to what they're finding up there, if they have an X structure and they put a leaner on one side of it, that's a side you're not supposed to go past. That's a no trespassing sign then. And no, they don't expect humans to know that. But it's a sign to like others around there, hey, stay out of this area. This is our territory, stay out of here. And where we find these things, it almost invariably turns out to be where there's a lot of juvie tracks. This is the kids' playground.
Where the youngsters are.
Yep, exactly. Stay out, kids' playground.
Gosh, we in Sasquatch Canyon, we would find 19, 17, 14-inch tracks predominantly, and once in a while, near the one with 14-inch tracks, we would find this one with 7-inch tracks. So it was like the 14-inchers the mom, the 7-inchers the baby. And then like a year or two later, we caught up to them again, and the little ones tracks are no longer 7, they're 8. So we're like witnessing the growth of the youngster. Well, the 19 and the 14-inch tracks are together a lot. So we're guessing that the 19 is the male, the 14 is the female, and the one with 17-inch tracks, it's got to be part of the family, or that he kicked it to the curb. So maybe it's the adult's son of those two. But anyway, the year that we discovered that the youngster had grown from 7 to 8-inch tracks, we found the 14 and the 17-inch, the 14 and the 19-inch tracks together. Well, Brody's an animal. He's a mountain goat. It's really rough trying to keep up with that guy, and he pushes you every inch of daylight. And when you're with Brody, he makes you climb like 8 mountains before he lets you go home. But we tracked him up a mountain there, and we're following him. And the the female, we guess, has the 14-inch tracks close to the same size as Patty. She kept on putting the same handprint down on the steepest part of the mountain. And I was just like, why does she keep putting her hand down? And it's always the same one. And we recorded this. We have it on video on one of our expeditions. And then we get to a flat spot and we pick up the 8 inchers and we realize she's carrying the infant in one arm, and the steep sections to help her up, she keeps putting her left hand down. She's carrying the youngster in her right. Well, the section where she put the youngster down, we're finding the youngster's tracks, and we can see where it's rolling around, throwing stuff in the air, ripping bark off of trees, and making these little mini structures that are only like 2-3 feet tall, throwing sticks up into host tree. And so it's like it's copying the adults. It's making its own little structures in this little playground and stuff. And it's just the neatest thing to witness that. And that female's hand, crazy enough, her left hand from the very bottom to the longest finger was 14 inches. And her foot's just a little bit longer than that. And then the thumb, in comparison to people, the thumb's a little bit more stubbier.
Right.
Her in proportion with her hand, her thumb looked a little bit more stubbier. But she put her hand down several times on the steepest parts of that hike. And so all the evidence tells us that she was actually carrying that youngster and then let it down to play at a certain point. So it's just fun to go out and see this stuff for yourself. The camera don't do it justice. We try to share that with viewers, but there's a lot of stuff that we see and the camera's not rolling, or the camera's video or microphone just doesn't pick it up as well as being there firsthand.
Well, and they're great about waiting until you got the camera turned off to actually do something so you don't record it. Damn it, you guys, quit doing that. They do that to everybody. They're observing you. Oh, you got the camera off yet? Okay, make a whoop. Oh, no, I turned it back on again. Don't make any noise.
Can we take a couple-minute break?
Yeah, actually do that.
Okay.
This is going to be epic. So anyway, let's get back to the interview here. One of the things that I brought up when we started chatting on MeWe there a few days ago was that we had just had an expedition up here to our area in September and kept hearing this weird vocalization. And at first we weren't even sure it was a vocalization because there was light to medium wind, and we thought maybe it was like trees rubbing together and squeaking. And then there wasn't any wind, and we kept hearing it. And it was this kind of weird moaning, howl, squeaking, weird sound all combined. We kept hearing it, and then we noticed when there was no wind, it was coming from more than one place. And so that was really weird. And every time we would try and get up across the road and record it, they'd quit. And as soon as we decided to go walk out in the woods and look where their structures were, they quit. And then when we got back to camp, they started up again. So Eric, I think, got like 15, 20 seconds of it, and I'm not sure the recording was very good. But the first thing he did when he got back to civilization was get on the internet and go, is anybody else recorded this weird vocal? Because me and William Lunsford, who's been doing this 40 years down in Falk, we both drew a blank. We're like, I'd never heard this before. I don't know what the hell's even doing this. We can assume it's Sasquatch because they're all over the place here, but we don't know. And as soon as Eric gets back within a day, he sends me a message and he says, Kelly Shaw just recorded the same vocal a couple of weeks ago, Silver Creek Sasquatch. And I'm like, no shit. And I go and look at your video, and right at the beginning, there you are going, hey, we're hearing this sound. We don't know what it is. Hopefully it'll repeat. We're going to try and record it. And bang, you nailed it. And it was exactly the same thing we were hearing all weekend up there. And keeping in mind, neither of us, with combined over 80 years of experience, had ever heard this vocalization before. And he's from down the deep south. I'm up here in Montana, and you're over there being confused by it. I think it was right around your neck of the woods where, Silver Creek, wherever that was, but you're hearing the same damn thing 2 weeks earlier, hundreds of miles away.
It was the mountains above the Rogue River. We have done a Bigfoot expedition to the upper Rogue River because the Bigfoot sightings there. And then after doing that expedition there, it's amazing how you'll put out an expedition or a sighting report video, and then all of a sudden people will be like, well, that's where I had my sighting. This is what happened. And so after we were at the upper Rogue River, we got several sighting reports, even one where it come into a lady's house, scared the shit out of her. She thought she was going to die. The damn Bigfoot come into her house. Yeah. And so, and then a fisherman that saw a reddish orange one that took his salmon and stuff that he caught. So we did another expedition to the lower Rogue River. And one of the days we were there, we're following, Bigfoot's a ridge walker, so we want to get up on the ridges and check those areas too. We try to leave no stone unturned when we're on an expedition. So this was a ridge line expedition this day. So we're trying to get up on the ridge lines up above the Rogue River, and we get to a spot where Jenny and I were just stopping there to have a sandwich. And we stop and we open the doors. I think our windows were open anyway. And as soon as we stop, we hear this tree getting ripped apart and this deep guttural growl, just intimidating, scared the shit out of us. And then we hear some howls off in the other direction. And I could tell Jenny didn't want to get out of the car after we heard that.
After that, I could see why.
So I'm handing her bear mace. I'm grabbing mine. It's like, come on, let's see if we can record it. And we get out of the car, and we're both scared shitless because of what we just heard. And she's like, she doesn't want to even get away from the car. I mean, it's our only form of protection, the steel in the glass of the car. So she wants to stay close enough to the vehicle that she can sprint there in a couple of seconds. And so I'm trying to coax her to come away, and I start recording. We just heard some vocalizations, and almost immediately these non-threatening, actually friendly whoops, a deep one and a higher pitched one. We kept hearing those, and I was hoping the camera would pick them up, and it picked up a lot of them. Yeah. And I think it subdued both of us. They were so non-threatening and friendly that I was finally able to coax her to leave the vehicle and hike around. And we tried to go into a clearing along a tree line and slip behind it, which to me is impossible. As soon as we drove up, as soon as we drove up, it knows we're there. We're not slipping behind it, but we tried anyway. But they kept whooping at us at different intervals and all that, and really non-threatening. So it was weird when we pulled up. It was like the threat display, ripping down a tree and growling, and I think it was just letting us know how badass we were when it come into its territory. And then after that, maybe it was curious and just kept giving us these friendly, non-threatening whoops, and we got those recorded. And I think at the beginning, we always have a dash camera going, and um, I want a dash camera going because most of the over half the sightings that are reported, people see it from the seat of their
Driving.
vehicle.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, both my sightings, I was sitting in the front seat of my car when I saw the Bigfoot, and my dash camera was going when that thing ripped the tree and growled, and I went back to the dash cam and it didn't pick it up.
Damn
For
it.
whatever reason. The microphone's just not as good as our handheld cameras. And we were also um, when I'm on an expedition and I know I'm going to be filming that day, I got my shotgun microphone on one of the cameras, and that's the camera I grabbed when I rolled out of the vehicle. I'm like, oh, we just heard vocalizations. Bam! I snatched the Canon 60 with the shotgun microphone on it, and the shotgun microphone's like a parabolic mic. It's about as powerful as a 4-inch parabolic mic, and it's directional. I mean, you somewhat have to be in that direction for it to pick it
Aim
up.
it at the sound. Yeah.
And if you're aimed in the right direction, it'll pick up a mouse farting from like 100 yards away. So it's pretty powerful as long as it's aimed in the direction. So I give that camera a lot of credit to the reason why we were able to pick up all those whoops before they ended and everything. But that was a messed up day. We got up higher on the mountain. We were actually and right now I don't remember off the top of my head. We were heading to this mountaintop lake where there's a bunch of Bigfoot sightings above the Rogue River, and we didn't make it there. We got 2 flat tires at the same time.
Oh God.
Oh yeah, and and I was tripping out. I'm like, we just heard that Bigfoot tear down a tree, rip things up, and then the reason why I'm calling it a Bigfoot is because on that little hike where we heard the whoops and stuff, we actually filmed and measured a really good Bigfoot track. So there's a high probability that we heard a Bigfoot tear down a tree, growl at us, and then start doing these non-threatening whoops. And the whoops were coming from two
More than one
different
direction.
angles. One
Yeah.
was higher pitched, one was lower pitched. So I think there was at least 2 of them. And I just didn't want to stay the night on that mountain with them. It was getting dark. We got 2 flat tires at the same time.
Oh,
Knock
God.
on wood. That's the first time that ever happened to me. And it was a flip. It was a coin flip. I'm like, which one am I putting the fix it flat in, and which one am I changing out? And so I put a fix a flat in one of them, and it didn't work because when I went down to get that one fixed, the guy that fixed it was like putting his freaking finger in the hole, and he's like, "You should have put the fix a flat in this other one." And but that other one, I left on the vehicle, and then we had this compressor, which is worth its weight in gold. This little compressor that you plug into the cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
Every 15 minutes, we had to stop and pump up that tire and then drive. And that's we limped off the mountain. We had a base camp at the head of the Rogue River, and we'd had no intentions of staying the night on that mountain. And after what happened, I didn't want to, but we limped back to base camp, got to base camp, and then the next morning I went down to Gold Beach, Oregon, to get my 2 flat tires fixed. And this is crazy. We're in there, and the 2 technician, well, no, one technician comes out, and I'm like, I got 2 flat tires, blah 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 blah, and he goes back and works on them, and then he has me come back into the shop, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna have to replace this one, and he's sticking his finger through the hole. I'm like, he goes, you need a new tire on this one, and I'm like, all right. And then he's like, hey, my friend recognized you, and this guy that's a little bit older than me, shaved bald head and everything. He's like, aren't you guys R.M.S.O? And we're like, yeah, we got a YouTube channel, and then he starts going off. He's like, yeah, I watch your guys' channel. He's like, my grandpa was one of the workers that helped build Highway 5 when all that Bigfoot stuff happened. And he told me that was all real. He doesn't care what anyone says. There was Bigfoot throwing their fuel drums into the ravine and messing with their equipment. Um, but anyway, he started going off, and then the other guy's like, I had a Bigfoot sighting right here along the Rogue River. If you guys go there, and I didn't want to tell him, yeah, we were there 2 days ago, but yeah, he was putting us right on a spot where he had a Bigfoot sighting a few years ago, and we had already been to that spot on our expedition. So that was kind of cool. We had two locals that were like backing up the area that we were in. So
You know you're in the
it
right spot when the locals are going,
Mhm.
yeah, I had a sighting over there.
Sucks to get flat tires and have to go get them fixed. And I'm glad we got off the mountain, but it like connected us with a couple of locals that were just like, yeah, started telling us where to go. And, you know, I wasn't going to sit there and say, yeah, I've been there, done that. And so it was just reaffirming that we were in the right spot.
I've only had one time where somebody recognized me and came up and talked to me, but on my vehicle, I have Bigfoot stickers on it.
Uh-huh.
And several times I'm pulling into a parking lot and there's somebody right on my tail. And when I park, they pull up right next to me and they're like, hey, man, have you seen a Bigfoot around here? And I'm like, yeah. Well, I just saw one over at such and such. And usually these guys have more than one sighting they want to tell you about, too. I was downtown Missoula just standing on a street corner talking to one of my friends, and we got on the subject of Sasquatch. And he was telling me a story about a possible encounter that he had had when he was berry picking, camping and berry picking. And as we're just sitting there on the street corner, somebody comes walking by and they're listening to what we're talking about, and they walk over and they go, hey, man, I saw one too. And they start telling us their story. Well, we were there for almost 35, 40 minutes by the time we got off the street because people kept walking by listening to the conversation going, oh, hey, man, I may have had an encounter over here. Dude, we had three different people do that, one right after the other. I'm like, man, I should have a microphone going. All I got to do is stand in downtown Missoula and go, hey, Bigfoot sightings, come here. So yeah, it's a lot more common than you would think. You know, around here, a lot of people just kind of, they're a regular animal. It's like a moose. There's moose, there's grizzly, there's mountain lions, there's Bigfoot. Yeah, so and further north of here, especially, you get up into the Yak, where it's mostly like logging country and stuff, and they just think they call them timber apes. It's just like, yeah, so they're around here. They get mad sometimes when you cut down too many trees.
Well, not many people report them to somewhere that's going to put them on a database, put them out there to the public. A lot of people keep them to themselves, maybe tell a couple of family members or a friend, but the actual Bigfoot sighting reports out there, I'm guessing that it may be like 5% of the actual Bigfoot sightings. Not very many people go to a source that's gonna record them for the public.
Yeah, at most, usually they'll try and find a friend or somebody they know that may have had a sighting, and then they'll whisper to each other about, what happened with yours, blah blah, and they won't tell anybody else. So it doesn't go very far, in areas where people just kind of know that they're around. It's not a big deal because everybody kind of knows they're around. So again, they're not really talking about it. It's like no big deal. Yeah, I saw
And then
moose last week too. So what?
and then the ones that do report them, there's only like 10% of the ones that actually report them to me that get a hold of us that want us to use their full name, and most of them want to stay anonymous or use my initials, just use my first name, just use my last name.
Yeah,
I don't want to ruin my career. I don't want people to make fun of me. But the nice thing is you know, finding Bigfoot, love them or hate them, they actually um, put the Bigfoot subject in the common home and made it more of an acceptable topic. You know, for all the good and bad they did, that's one good thing they did is it's a more acceptable topic to talk about. More people since then have been coming forward and Monster Quest before finding Bigfoot. So it's becoming more mainstream and people are getting more comfortable talking about it. And that's good for you and I because that is my bread and butter. That is what keeps me motivated. People's Bigfoot sightings. I thrive on the sighting reports, especially when I can tell the witness is telling me the truth, especially when I can corroborate unrelated um, people in the area that have experienced the same thing, saw the same thing, and those get me looking. I love to go to Bigfoot sighting report areas and look around and see what I can find.
Yeah, that's that, and it shows, and you get a lot of really cool videos because of it. And that's, I wish more researchers would do that. You know, hey, there was just a sighting over here. Let's go over here, film the spot. You know, even if you can't get the witness on camera, you can film the spot where it happened. You can document what it looked like, and that's all really cool. When you're hearing the report and you're looking at the spot where it happened, it brings it so much into the realm of reality rather than just some creepy pasta story. And before I forget, I got to bring up one of the my favorite things that you ever did. As a matter of fact, won the official World Bigfoot Radio Rugged Ass Researcher of the Year award 2 years ago because
Thanks.
you went yeah, well, this is borderline crazy. There was somebody that was out there and they saw a Bigfoot walking across the top of a big ridge on a mountaintop and they filmed it. And within a day, you had figured out exactly where the hell that was, and you and team were there, and you're like, well, I'm going to climb up and see if I can find some tracks. And you got Derek down there in the ground filming, and you're going up this ice chute that looks like something out of a friggin' Climb Mount Everest movie with like tennis shoes or something. And you're like, well, this is kind of dangerous. I'm going to try and film what I'm seeing as I'm going up. And I'm rooting for you to go back down again. I'm like, what are you, nuts? You're going to fall and kill yourself. You don't have crampons and an ice axe or anything. So somehow Kelly survives climbing to the top of this thing. And when he gets up there, he's walking around. He's like, "Oh, here's the tracks of the guy that was on the internet saying that he couldn't find anything." And the next thing here's the tracks of the Bigfoot that he didn't notice that are right up here. That was kick-ass, man. You won the Rugged
Oh,
Ass Researcher of the Year award for that shenanigan. You have no common sense going up icy crap like that without proper mountaineering equipment.
I would have never in a million years gone up there except for after analyzing that video, I felt 99.9% sure it was the real deal. Otherwise, I wouldn't have went up there. Derek was supposed to go up there with me, and after we got up that steep mountain in the ice and snow a couple hundred yards, he's like, "This is bullshit. I'm going back down." And I'm like,
That was my
"Well,
reaction watching you film yourself going up there too. I'm like, you're gonna friggin' kill yourself, Kelly. What the hell?
and then I told him, I'm like, that's probably the best so that you can get me into the right spot. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was helpful. We spent 2 hours at that base of that mountain going back and forth and around, I call it around the corner. After we GPSed it, less than a mile away, the famous Squaw Peak Bigfoot video. That was filmed in the fall several years before. That was only like a mile away from that exact spot. So, I mean, Bigfoot has been filmed twice in that pretty much that exact spot. A mile to me, that's the exact spot. But we
Yeah,
went
miles
back and
nothing to them.
we went back and forth scanning that mountain and glassing the ridges in the mountain looking for Bigfoot, and we kept looking for the best way to hike up to the position where the Bigfoot should have been on film. And anyway, when I hiked up to it, I ended up where one of the guys that was with the group that filmed it, they went up to investigate and they gave up because they come up to this 30-foot tall cliff wall, which seemed like it was just impossible to get any higher. And they're like, "Oh, well, no Bigfoot tracks," and they went back down. But because Derek and I had analyzed it for a couple of hours before attempting it, um, a little ways to the south, there was a way up on top. Well, when I got to where those guys stopped at the cliff top and realized that's where they stopped, I kind of knew where I was at. And then I called Derek. I mean, we're, God, what is it? I forget. Oh, Bountiful. We're in Bountiful. Plenty of cell towers around. Blah blah blah. Don't need walkie talkies. I just called down to him and said, "Hey, blah blah blah. I'm where those guys are at." And he's like, "Yeah, you need to go a little bit south." And I already knew that because of us studying the mountain. So I went south, and then I was able to get up on top and found Bigfoot tracks. Something really weird that I found up there, and I filmed it, was like this 300-pound square rock that was stuck in the ground, and it got pulled up out of the ground for whatever reason. And there was no, I just don't think a single person could do that without like a crowbar or a shovel. And it
That was the
probably
middle of the winter. The ground's as hard
yeah,
as concrete.
and
It's frozen in.
it would probably break the your shovel
Yeah.
pulling it out. But yeah, I could not see any evidence that that was pried out with a physical, with a man-made tool.
Right.
So for whatever reason, that Bigfoot, because the tracks were right there, and to me, that's damn near the exact spot it was filmed, is right where that rock was pulled out of the ground. So I mean, wintertime, it was a bad winter. I think that's why it was down in the foothills. These ridge walkers, Bigfoot, they stay up high, and I think the deep snow that year drove it down towards town and got it spotted. But I think it pulled the rock up to get food that was under it, whether it was a mouse, a ground squirrel, grubs, or whatever. I think that was the motivation for pulling that 300-pound rock out of the ground. So that that was pretty neat, and I probably wouldn't do it again. That was really dangerous. If
No
I fell
kidding.
down and if I fell down and took a slide in the wrong spot, I could have just went off of a cliff down below. So yeah, I do some stupid things in the search for Bigfoot.
Well, you're not the only one that I know that's actually gotten too excited and run towards them trying to film them or record them.
That's
So,
adrenaline, pure
yeah.
adrenaline.
Yeah. Oh, I'm crazy. I'm running toward this giant thing in the woods now. Woohoo! Ready to be swatted now. Oh my God.
Oh, and that was the first thing out of Jenny's voice when I took off. She's like, "You're unarmed," and I'm running, and I'm like, "Grab something." So I was leaving it up to her to grab our protection.
What you should have done is just yelled back, "Don't tell them that."
Oh hell.
You're giving it away.
Yeah, I've known her all my life, and Jenny and I got together about 12 years ago, and I don't know, after you've had a marriage and a divorce, you got these criteria for a woman, and my woman needs to be a camping enthusiast, and I already knew she was. And so when we got together and stuff, we just started camping like hell. And she likes to be scared. Scary movies. Not I don't think she likes to be scared where there's actually a threat of really getting injured or dying.
Right.
But our first year of camping, I did what I always do. I took her to Bigfoot sighting locations, but I didn't tell her at first, and then I started letting her know, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then she took an interest to it, and I'm just lucky she has this addiction to being scared. She's now desensitized to it, not so much as I. She's still my nighttime warning system. She'll wake me up at night when she hears something outside the tent, but it's really nice. For us,
She's got a great voice too. I love it when she does a narration of, an encounter or something.
I
And
wish
the
I
other
could
thing
get her
I've
to do
noticed,
more of those.
she should do more of them. She's got a
But
great narration voice and she can read really well. And the other thing that I notice about her is how good of a tracker she is. I'm
mhm.
paying attention to who's finding the tracks most of the time, and dude, it's her.
What? Well, one of our tactics is I watch the ridge lines and she watches the tracks, but she is a
Yeah.
better tracker than I am, and she's really good at spotting animals. And I think it's a woman thing. I think women, for some reason, can detect movements a lot better. But she also has a sixth sense. When we first got together and started hiking and camping, and we're both camping enthusiasts, but Bigfooting's like camping on steroids, putting
Right.
yourself in those crazy places where people see Bigfoot. But she has a sixth sense, and I didn't believe it at first. But after a while, I'm like, oh my God, she can sense living things. Um, like, say, for instance, uh, in the redwoods of California and stuff, she like pointed down to a leaf and she's like, there's an animal under that, this big leaf, nothing showing. And I'm like, what? I pick up the leaf and there's a salamander under it, and I'm like, what the hell? And then another time when we were up near Glacier in Kalispell, we were there investigating a Bigfoot sighting report that a Native American sent us in there. And we're Bigfooting and we kind of take a break, a breather. We're climbing a mountain. And Jenny's like, there's something watching us. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, this chick's crazy. There's nothing watching us. I'm like, there's nothing watching us. And then all of a sudden I notice movement out of my eye. And like 8 feet away, hanging from one leg, um, just, I don't know, barely above our heads, is a pine marten. And he's sitting there watching us. And he reminded me of Jabba the Hutt's little pet on Star
Oh
Wars.
yeah.
And he's watching us and he's got all this intelligence in his eyes. And I'm like, and that's when I was like, oh my God, she really has that sixth sense. She can detect when there's a living presence around. And then it climbs down the tree and is checking us out and comes up to us and stuff. And she's wanting to pet it. And I'm grabbing her arm like, it's going to bite your hand off, and then it took off. But anyway, that happens constantly. And so, when we go in an area and she starts freaking out that there's something dangerous in the area, I believe her sixth senses. I completely trust in them now. After time and again that they've proved themselves to me, and I think she's a wonderful asset. She can track. She's really good at detecting movement, and she detects living creatures. As a matter of fact, I thought our first out in the open Bigfoot sighting would happen because she sensed it or saw the movement. But I've saw Bigfoot twice out in the open and she didn't see it. She was a passenger one time, driving another time, and then I mean, she has saw Bigfoot herself many years ago. Many years before I did, but the two times together I saw it and she didn't.
Damn it. Well,
I know.
she is just a gigantic help for you in the plus column because she is so kick-ass. She's enthusiastic about being out there. She can hike like nobody's business. She's good at finding tracks. She can sense the animals are around. And when she gets freaked out, then you take over because you have more balls than common sense, and you run toward them and try and film them. So you guys make a great.
Yeah,
You make a
I'm
great team.
stupid. Yes.
That's me too.
She's the
It's
brains of the
amazing I'm alive
operation.
too. Yeah, it's amazing I'm alive too. I don't have anybody like her to keep an eye on me. I think the Sasquatch just feel pity for me. Look at that stupid bastard out here walking around trying to find us. Oh my God. He's got a cane and everything. He's still out here trying to walk around and find us.
Hey, I always have a walking stick myself.
I've been trying to get away from it because I got too many hands tied up. I got a camera in one hand, a cane in the other hand, and I'm trying to
Well,
juggle things around. So now I'm wearing ankle and back brace to, so I can make short hikes, the ridiculous ruggedness, and
I
not have to
use
have a
a
cane with me.
I use a monopod so that my walking stick's also my camera.
Yeah, yeah, I can
So,
see that as being very handy. Well, I think the only thing we didn't cover here yet is what's your favorite Bigfoot experience that, well, let's just say, what's your favorite one that you got on video?
oh, Bigfoot experience on video.
I know one we didn't bring up is where you guys were doing the road drive and talking. You came around a corner and there was one trying to eat berries off a bush, and you kind of jumped him and he ducked and ran for it. And you got a little bit of him on video, but then and you again, Kelly Shaw, I'm going to jump out of the vehicle and go run over into the bush where he was just at and see if I can find tracks. I do that too.
Yeah, I got my butt chewed after that one about how dangerous that was. The adrenaline takes over and my brains go away.
I have the same problem.
Well, my favorite Bigfoot experience that I didn't get it on video, but I got photos. Our first year of Bigfooting, we only took pictures, and we were just taking pictures, and we made slideshows, and just I don't know, we just were barely. I mean, we'd Bigfooted for a couple of years, and just thinking, oh, we'll get a picture of the creature, and then if we found evidence, we would take photos of it and stuff. But it was Sasquatch Canyon. We seen that the place got nicknamed by hunters in Price as Sasquatch Canyon because of all the Bigfoot sightings and Bigfoot tracks the hunters find in there, and just so many Bigfoot sightings, and it's like 120 miles from where we live. So to me, that's a convenient area. It's a place that we can get to in a couple of hours and then camp for a few days. And it was only like our second or third time in there, and we were checking around. It was like April, the first week of April, and we were checking around beaver ponds, because I've noticed a lot of Bigfoot sightings around beaver ponds. And then of course it's a great place where the ground's soft. If something's coming in and getting food, or I mean not food but water, it's going to leave Bigfoot tracks. So we stopped to check out this beaver pond, and we get down into the willows, and both of us hear and feel a thump that just shook the ground, and you feel it in your chest. And I grew up on a racehorse farm, and so I grew up around horses, and horses can make that thump and kind of make the ground shake and feel it in your chest if they're really close. And so what was going through my mind, the only thing that could do that is a moose, that's as big and heavy as a horse. So I looked at Jenny and I'm like, keep your eye open for a moose. So I thought we were in the willows with the moose. And then we get up to the creek, and we crossed a beaver dam to the other side. We used that as a bridge, and we crossed it, and we get about halfway through, and just it stunk like you wouldn't believe. And Jenny's like, do you smell that? And I'm like, oh yeah, it stinks. And then we get across, and immediately Jenny's like, hey, check that out, a Bigfoot track. And I start looking at it, and it's not really nice or anything, but it's like, hey, it's the shape and everything, but maybe it's a coincidence. And then we move down the river a little bit further, and there's another one that sunk in like 5 inches deep, and the
That's fairly
toes
undeniable.
and
Yeah.
everything, the mid tarsal, and it's deep, and it actually like made my legs weak. I mean, this is like 12 years ago. Made my legs weak. I'm in denial, and I sat down on a rock just staring at it. And I'm trying to like think of all these different coincidences that could come together to make it. I didn't want to accept that a creature could do that. And then finally I come to my senses, and like, we need to measure it, and 17 inches long, 8 inches wide at the toe splay. Down where it tapers at the hill, it was like 5 or 6 inches, whatever it was. And I'm like, holy shit. And then Jenny's like, look, across the creek, you could see where it took a couple of steps before it leaped. And it made like a 15-foot leap across the creek. So I'm thinking it was on the same side of the creek as us. And when we come into the willows, it took a couple of steps and jumped. And where it sunk in 5 inches, that's where we felt and heard the thud. And and we're checking it out and stuff, and it's like, we need to cast that. Well, I had some bad information back in the day. You know, people are like, use that foam, that insulation foam and
Oh yeah.
everything. Don't
You
use
can
it.
use flour. Just mix some flour with
Mm,
water. That'll make
Don't use it. We sprayed
Don't
that
use it.
we sprayed that foam in there to cast it. And sounds like a good idea and everything, because that one can of foam, you could probably do 100 Bigfoot tracks if you had 100 of them. But we put it down in there, and we laid a piece of cardboard on it and a little bit of a rock, and we're waiting for it to set up. Well, it was very humid. It was very cold. First week of April in northern Utah, and
Oh
that
God.
stuff was tacky. As soon as we got done casting it, something started coming down towards the creek in the trees from us, and it's coming down making a ruckus, and I was expecting an elk or a moose or something big like that to break through the tree line to come down to get a drink. So I stepped to where I could get a good look at the tree line, and it didn't come through the tree line. It stopped at the tree line and kept out of sight, and just kept pacing back and forth, ripping shit up, ripping branches off, stomping around, just making all kinds of intimidating noise and stuff. And both Jenny and I are freaking out, and it's getting darker, and we kept on checking the cast, and it's tacky. It's not setting up very fast because it's cold and humid. And I mean, this went on for about 30 minutes, and alls we had on us was some mace. Jenny had a sidearm in the vehicle. She's got her like concealed permit or whatever, but we just didn't bring it with us, and it was in the vehicle. And she kept talking about going back and getting it and stuff. But anyway, we went up into the tree line. I finally said, you know what? Whatever made that footprint, I think is up there, and that's what we're here for. Let's go up. And she's like, what? And I'm like, we'll just mace the hell out of it. You know, so I talked her into going up there instead of going and getting her
Mace the hell.
firearm. And anyway, we head up to the tree line, and as soon as we start heading up to that tree line, which was probably 40, 50 feet away, it got real quiet, and then we could hear it sneaking back into the draw. And we get up to the tree line and into the tree line where it was going back and forth, and it's thick vegetation, and you could see where it just stomped everything down. You could see all the branches it snapped off and threw onto the ground and everything. And we went back into the draw looking for it, and we just couldn't find any definitive tracks like we did down at the creek. But it kept quiet, and it hid from us, and we couldn't find it. And we spent about 45 minutes looking for it, and the sun was about ready to go down. So we're
Oh
like,
God.
yeah, so we're like, we didn't
Time
want to
to
be
go.
stuck back in there with it. So we finally went down to the shoreline and checked on the cast, which was still tacky. And then as soon as we got down and started checking it, it rushed the tree line again, same spot, started pacing back and forth, ripping shit up again. And I just don't think elk and a moose, a bear, a mountain lion behave that way. I think the creature that made that track that we were casting was doing all of that. So
Mhm.
anyway, the sun went down, and we had enough. We had enough. We weren't going to stay out there with it at night, and we dug that cast up prematurely
Damn it.
and took it back to the vehicle. Well, after we dug it up, that foam kept expanding,
Uh-huh.
and anyway, it ruined the toes, and it was 8 inches wide, but after we dug it up, it grew another inch wide. It was 17 inches long. It grew another inch long. So that foam, after 2 hours, kept expanding. Don't use foam. Use dental cast, use art plaster, use plaster Paris. Don't use foam. It'll ruin your tracks. But anyway, we got in the vehicle, and we left. And that's my favorite encounter with Bigfoot. It was terrifying, but I love it. I just
God.
loved what happened. It was there. It was watching this cast its track.
I've had a few times where I found tracks and they were, if they're big and they're clear, it's impressive when you find them.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, this thing was just here very recently, and look at how damn big it is. But the only time it really freaked me out was a couple years ago when I was down by this river in this really deep wooded spot, And apparently it's where the wagon road used to go through the valley. It's not where the road is now, because there's still vestiges of where this old wagon road used to be. And so all the animals use it for a game trail too. And it's right next to the river. So guess who else walks down it? So every time we're over there, we go and check this little piece of this vestigial trail because it's right next to where they have a 3-4 story tall teepee structure. So we go check that all the time. So we're walking along there and I'm like, hey, Mike, come on over here. Check this out. There's this huge track and it's in the mud. And a little bit further ahead of it, there's another huge track. And a little bit further ahead, there's another huge track. Well, they're all partials, like only part of each footprint came down in the mud and then the rest of it was on some solid piece. So you got the front of one foot and you got like the back 3/4 of another one. And we're looking at them, we're trying to measure them. And first of all, they're about 21 inches long. Secondly, they're too thin looking. So I'm getting creeped out going, either this is the biggest damn female ever, or this isn't even a Sasquatch, it's a giant or something. So I'm getting kind of creeped out. So Mike, finish taking pictures and stuff here. I'll go ahead and see if I can find anything a little further ahead of us. Now this area is really deep and dark and scary, and it's getting closer to where that.
Can I run to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah, go ahead while I finish telling it. No, that's no problem.
I'll be right back, Duke.
Yep. So anyway, to finish the story for the rest of you guys, I went walking a little bit further down the river, and as soon as I got down there, I started feeling this pressure ahead of me, like the sense that something is watching you, and what's watching you is not happy that you're there, and it wants you to turn around and take your happy butt back the direction you just came. And so I couldn't see anything. I mean, they could have been fairly close to me. Just, all they have to do is not move and you don't notice them. But whatever it was, I just had this impression that, yeah, there's something really big right in front of me. It ain't happy. And so I said, okay, I'm turning around. I'm going back now. And I turned around and walked back up the river again to where Mike was. And by then he was just finishing up documenting the tracks and getting some more pictures and video of it. So, yeah, it's in summation of this little story, it's best to actually be aware of what's going on around you. And like Kelly was just talking about with Jenny being able to sense when things are looking at you, I've got pretty much the same ability because I've been running around in the woods, hunting and tracking and stuff since I was a little kid. And after a while, you can kind of tell when there's something watching you. And you can even kind of differentiate, like, hey, there's something, it's the intelligence thing. If it's intelligent and it's watching you, you can feel the eye pressure. And when you get sensitive enough at it, you can tell if it's something that means you harm or not. And even beyond that, you can sense if it's just some dangerous predator watching you or a dangerous predator that's trying to think about eating you, watching you. And they're all different. So the more you're out there doing this sort of thing. Yeah, well, I mean, I can sense when things are watching me. I've been able to do that since I was a little kid. Or when there's something around following you around, I can always sense that.
Yeah, I'm amazed at people that have that sixth sense like you and Jenny, and I just didn't believe it until I saw evidence of it several times, and I feel like I've been deprived of that sixth sense. I mean, I have it sometimes, but not like you.
I think a lot of it is just repetition because where I grew up, I didn't have any neighbor kids to play with or anything. All I had was just huge woods behind the house. So that's where I was all the time.
You grew up in the outback?
The critters. Yeah, well, northern Minnesota, our nearest neighbor was over a mile away. And there's nothing but woods. That's all there was. You went straight back behind our house, you could go 3.5 miles and you'd run into the south side of a big lake that didn't have a road or any houses on it. And then it was 7 miles in one direction until you ran into a road and about 4 miles in another direction before you ran into a road.
Sounds amazing. That's the kind of place I want to live now.
yeah, that's where I grew up. And, basically all we had up there was a lot of deer and wolves. You'd hear timber wolves howling and stuff out in the woods all the time. That was disturbing. Especially when it's like, I want to go wander around the woods, Mom. I'm like, yeah, bring a gun. There's timber wolves out there. They get big. So I think it's not so much any kind of a mystical ability. It's just developed because you're doing it all the time. And I was out hunting all the time. There's nothing else to do. So it was whatever's hunting season, snowshoe, going out snowshoeing, hunting bunnies in the middle of the winter or hunting squirrels in the summer or whatever,
Yeah.
I'm going to go out wander around the woods anyway. I might as well bring some food back with me. And one of the creepy things that I never talked about that happened a bunch of times is we had an ATV and we had a trail that we could go whipping way back into the woods and loop around. It was about 2.5 miles. And at one point, you go down this curve and there's like a steep drop off on the side. There used to be a logging road. And when you get down to the bottom of it, there's a little stream at the bottom of this valley. And then you go up this long climb, pretty steep, till you get back up to the top of the ridge again. And because it was so steep and everything, I would gun it going down there, and I'd get it as fast as I could by the time I was down at the base, use all the momentum, and then gun it again to get back up to the top of the ridge as fast as I could. There were several times that I was going up there as fast as I could go on an ATV, and I was hearing this flop, 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 flop of giant flat feet on the trail behind me. And I never turned around or stopped until I got to the top, and I turned around and looked, and there was nothing there. And this happened 3 or 4 times that I can remember. And at the time, I wasn't connecting the dots. I'm like, why is this ATV making this weird flop, flop, flop sound when I go up this ridge and nowhere else? It was like they could hear me coming from a long ways away, and they get down at the bottom and race up to the top, follow me up to the top, apparently, is what they were doing. And just beyond this area, I was up there squirrel hunting one time, and I was sitting in this pine thicket, and I was eating a sandwich, and something hit me. And then a minute or two later, something else hit me. And the third time it bounced off my hat and hit the ground, I looked at it, and it was an acorn. And I went, oh, there's a squirrel here dropping acorns on me. And I didn't think about the fact, there's no trees with acorns anywhere near here. I'm sitting in a pine thicket, dude. There wasn't a tree producing acorns within 100 yards of there. I'm sitting in a pine thicket, and I'm getting pelted with acorns. Something's doing it. But derp, you're a kid. You don't think about it. It doesn't register.
Dude, there was one time back in Sasquatch Canyon, Jenny, Brody, and I, and he had his parabolic mic, and these acorns were coming in, not from above, but some of them we would see coming in out of the tree line from above us at 45-degree angle, coming in on us, and it skipped a couple of them off the parabolic mic he was holding. I mean, they were like all directed at Brody, skipping off his chest and stuff. And it's oak brush that has these acorns, and this oak brush is all about chest level, but it was coming from out of the pine trees a ways away. And then Derek, several months later, is hiking back in there with his family and their dogs, and their dogs are freaking out, and acorns are coming out of the same trees, skipping off of them and stuff. And I know a squirrel can drop a acorn out of a tree, but I don't know of any squirrel that can throw them 50 feet and come out at an angle. So yeah, and Brody the whole time he's all like, I don't think the Bigfoot likes the parabolic mic, because all the acorns seem directed at him. So we've experienced the same thing with acorns as you have.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's one of the things that's fun about talking to other researchers that have been doing this for a long time, because we've all experienced so much of the same phenomenon. And one guy will bring it up, and then you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me. I remember it." Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, it's the same. We're chasing the same kind of critters around because they're doing the same thing all over the place.
Yeah, and I think that's a favorite food source of a Bigfoot. Earlier we were talking about that mountain that I climbed to the top of in Provo, on the foothills of Provo, and then where that Bigfoot video was filmed, and then a mile away several years before in Squaw Peak. If you notice that Squaw Peak Provo Canyon Bigfoot video, that Bigfoot is standing in oak brush, and it's the time of year where acorns are there. So it's an acorn place, 2 Bigfoot videos in that area, not to mention the dozens and dozens of Bigfoot sighting reports in the area, but the Bigfoot actually caught twice on video there, and it's an acorn place. And to me, that's a food source of Bigfoot. And you and I have both experienced where a Bigfoot's more than likely throwing acorns at us.
Yeah. Another thing that brings to mind too is some people think that, they're doing one thing at a time, like they're out hunting and now they're done hunting and they ate and they're going to go check out something or whatever. They're grazers. There was a guy in South Dakota that found a track line in the snow that went about 7 miles. And during the course of following it, there was 6, 7 places where it had reached down in the snow and grabbed a mouse or a vole or something that was underneath the snow and just ate it and continued on its way. They walk through a berry patch. They graze the berries as they're going through there. They go through an area where there's acorns. They're picking all the acorns next to them, shoving them in their mouth. They're just eating constantly.
Just like a deer or an elk would do.
They're like, yeah, here's my route from here to here. I want to go over here. And as long as I'm going there's 3 places along the way where I can just eat while I'm walking. They're opportunists. They're taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and constantly foraging. The first grizzly bear that I ever saw in the wild, Glacier National Park, we saw it. It was a big male blonde grizzly, and I was trying to get a photograph of it. And that bear would not stop moving. He wasn't very photogenic. He was constantly moving. He was foraging, and
Yep.
I mean, he was in the same 50-foot square area the whole time that we saw him, but he was constantly moving. He was foraging, and a Bigfoot's got to be the same way to get to fill his tummy until he can come across a large protein source. He's got to constantly be moving and eating to fill that belly.
Yep. And if you think about it, that's probably one of the reasons why they cooperate besides that they're social like we are, that they work better in groups, because one member of the group can be out gathering berries, another one's picking acorns, third one's mugging a deer and bringing it back. And you have to, do something for a couple hours and they got enough food to feed everybody for the day.
And I want to point something out. A Bigfoot, if he wants to throw something at you, he can throw sticks, he can throw rocks, pebbles, whatever he wants. But those 2 experiences that we had, your experience and my experience, where he's throwing acorns, is that a friendly gesture? That's a food source to him. And
Exactly.
He's giving it to you. Is
like
is he
he's throwing
gifting
pieces
us?
of candy at you.
Is he trying to befriend us? Yeah. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean that he could throw anything at us, but he's throwing a valuable food source. So that may be a friendly gesture, then
Yep.
But we're like, what's going on? So, but in hindsight, I'm like, that may be a friendly gesture. He's throwing us food.
Well, quickly getting back to the Silver Creek Sasquatch sounds again. When we were up there, we were hearing them the whole damn weekend, and I've been going up to this area for years now, and they've never made that vocalization before.
Right.
And the only thing that was different is that I had William Lunsford and Eric the Adventurer up there with me, and neither one of them had been there before. So the level of activity and vocalizations was just off the chart. Usually they're quiet. You hear maybe 1 or 2 whoops or a couple wood knocks during the course of a whole weekend. And this time they're just making a racket the whole time we're there. And the only time they would stop is when we went in the woods. Then it was dead still until we came back out, at which point they'd start up the racket again. And once we had established that this wasn't just nature and wind in the trees making this or anything, the next question is, what is this all about? And we had the same impression you did. It was more like a friendly sound, like, hey guys, come out here and visit us. Why are you still sitting in camp? Come out and visit us. And as soon as we went out in the woods, all the sound stopped until we got back to camp again. And the other thing is, when we went way down the river, I wanted to show these guys where that teepee structure was, where I was just talking about. I found the 21-inch tracks. And when we were down there, we walked around and I showed him everything, and we were walking back out again. Well, Eric heard somebody walking behind him. There was nobody behind him. And then he got out onto the road, and as soon as we got out there, they started whistling to us. And this is about 100 yards back in the woods on the other side of the river. There's more than one of them over there whistling to us. And so I'm like yelling words at them, and, a couple other people are whistling and stuff. There's 4 of us there. And I didn't even realize it, but Eric was recording all this. And he got it clear as day. For some reason, now that we're leaving, they're over there across the river whistling, hey, come back. Like, what the hell, you guys? You've never been this enthusiastic.
I think they can sense when you're not a threat, or you're
or
you're friendly. I I believe the ones in Sasquatch Canyon, they've seen us enough, they've smelled us enough, they've heard us enough. They know we're not up there to threaten them. So why not give us some acorns?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing is we're habituating to presence because we've been going up to the same area, every month, all summer long, year after year after
Yeah.
year. And they finally just gotten to the point where they're like, well, these guys are just up here to come visit us, basically. So let's
Yeah.
follow them around and see what
You,
they're doing.
you've never done anything threatening to them.
Never, never, ever. As a matter of fact, what we've done, our pattern over the years has been to disarm ourselves. When we came up there, we weren't sure of the valley, so we were armed in case we ran into mountain lions or grizzlies or anything. And now that we've been up there year after year after year and there's no sign of any predators, it's like, well, we really don't need to carry any guns or anything with us. And the other thing we noticed is the less armed we are, the more we're catching them on video because they're getting closer and closer. And a lot of them are the little ones, which frankly I find disturbing because they're not nearly as predictable as the adults are. And if one of them decides to come over and count coup on you and accidentally knocks you down, you better not have an issue with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of disturbs me. But on the other hand, it's like, great accolades from the adults that they trust us that much that they'll let the kids get really close to us. I mean, within like 15, 20 feet of us. And no problem. Okay, thanks for not killing me. Really appreciate that. Because it scares the crap out of me, And the scariest thing for me is finding them after the fact. I've got a couple of videos where I saw them and I zoomed in on them of varying quality. But usually I'm looking at the video and there they are in the background and I didn't even see them when I was filming it. And they're just sitting there watching me.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me, I got 2 pieces of video I'm going to send you I need your help with because I got a couple of them where I saw them and I zoomed in on them and the camera is just all over the place. Inevitably, when you get in that position, you're balancing on a friggin' rock or something and you're like, trying to zoom in on them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the one that I got is really cool because at first I thought it was the end of a log, and then I went, that log has eyes. So I zoomed in on it, and the log that I was looking at was a littler one with the black hair that was laying on the ground face toward me. And I didn't even notice the log next to him wasn't a log, it was an adult. And you could see his face and his nose and his eyes and the whole thing. And they're both laying right next to each other, pretending to be logs. And then when I brought the camera past it, further up this ravine where the river is, you can see 2 more of them are sitting up there looking down the river watching me. And I never even noticed them. I just caught them on camera as I brought the camera past.
Yep. And if there's one, there's usually 1 or 2 more or a family.
Or more, yeah. Mike was further down the river behind me, so he was filming a little bit different scene, and he caught 3 on his video that he was filming at the same time. 2 of which were across and behind me on my left-hand side. I had already walked past them. I'm further up the river filming more of them that are ahead of me. And at that point, we kind of both got this feeling like there's a lot of somebody's in this valley watching us right now, and we should probably go up the hillside and get out of this. Well, I just zoomed in on 2 of them, so they're right there. I'm not walking that direction. And the only other direction other than walking into the river is go up that steep hillside. So that's which way we're going. And when we get up to the top of the steep hillside, what do we find? An old abandoned cabin from 100 years ago.
The most recent Bigfoot sighting I have near where you are located, which, it may not seem very near to you. Clam Valley. I don't know if you've heard it.
No.
It's Clam Valley, Montana is I didn't know of it before I got the Bigfoot sighting report. I got it either last year or the year before, after somebody watched one of my Bigfoot videos from in the area, investigation videos. But yeah, a guy out hunting had a Bigfoot sighting in Clam Valley, and that's over by the Big Hole area.
Okay.
Let me look at my map really quick so I can help you zone in on it.
There's actually there was a sighting over there of some airmen that got chased out of the woods by a 15-footer. They claimed it was 15 feet tall. Scared the living hell out of them. They jumped into their vehicle and got out of there.
Yeah, Clam Valley is actually I shouldn't call it the Big Hole area. It's actually northwest of Wisdom.
Okay.
I think. Wait, let me make sure. Yeah.
Right on.
Clam Valley's Northwest to Wisdom. Yeah, that's the latest Bigfoot sighting I've gotten near out where you live. So,
Nice.
we've been wanting to get in there since we got that guy's report. So we'll probably end up there one day.
Well, when you want to come out here to Montana and you get to central western Montana again, come visit because I've already scouted all the local areas. I know where the hot spots are here. You don't have to waste time going, oh, there's a report of somebody saw one go across the road here. No, Kelly, let's go over here 30 miles where there's 40 of them living.
We've already identified where they
Yeah,
hang out.
we know
Yeah.
exactly where they hang out. They already like us. Let's go visit.
Sounds like a plan.
That's the way to do it. You're guaranteed to get activity. I mean, you know, I love it when other researchers show up and I can show them around some of the hot spots that I got here because they're always active. There's always something going on there, greater or lesser extent. There's going to be some kind of activity. You're at least going to find tracks and see, you know, 5-story structures. You know? So, just from that standpoint, it doesn't suck a lot. But yeah, I would love to have you up here at some point, brother. I know we got several of the former guests on my show that are planning on making it up here this summer, and even Robert Kreider from Kreider Explorations. He was looking at the megalith video that we shot up here, and he said, hey, I think those are actual megaliths. I want to get up there and take a look at them this summer. So that would be super cool. You know, the real life.
I love Montana. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, and there's some places here that I haven't even had a chance to get to yet. Have you seen the Great Wall?
I have saw the Great Wall on photo. I've never been to the Great Wall.
Now that's another peculiar spot. And yeah, it looks like something from Kong Island, right? There's this 1,000-foot high wall, 22 miles long. Guess where they dumped the problem grizzly bears? On the other side of it.
Oh no! That's not where I want to go, bro.
No. That's the Bob Marshall Wilderness. I've had 3 different really, you know, heavily expert backwoodsman guys tell me they won't go in there anymore.
How close is that to Missoula?
Quite a ways away from here.
Okay.
Another thing that's very close to here, one of my roommates told me about, my former roommate, I think I mentioned that earlier on, that he had found this area not very far away from here, but you have to go way back up into the woods to the dead end of this road that goes in about 14 miles. And then there's an old logging road that connects to it that goes about another 3.5 miles. And then you're back in this valley where there's 500- and 600-year-old trees. It's never been logged. And he didn't see anything in there, but he did have trees thrown at him. So that's a strong sign that you know who is in there, because growling sounds and trees being thrown at you. Generally, grizzlies aren't doing that. And he said, yeah, they had hauled in lodgepole pines from somewhere else, because this is all different kind of pine trees. It's really huge ones, 500-600 years old. And they were leaning these, you know, mostly grown lodgepole pines against some of these trees and making structures. And he said the structures up there are the most gigantic thing ever. So I got to get up there and document that.
Nice.
Excuse me. All right, buddy. Well, was there anything else we wanted to mention other than give yourself a plug, tell everybody where they can find your stuff so they can go catch up on the umpteen gazillion super awesome videos that you've already got out?
Well, if you guys want to find us on YouTube, we're Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization, but you can find us under R.M.S.O Bigfoot, and our blog is R.M.S.O Bigfoot blogspot.com. And our blog, we like to highlight Bigfoot sighting reports, and usually a Bigfoot sighting report will make it onto our blog before we actually make a video. What we do is if we deem that someone's report's credible, we make a blog report out of it, and then when we get the next opportunity, whether it's 2 days, 2 months, a year from now, we go visit the location and we do an investigation, and then we'll do a video report in the area, and then so If you guys want to keep up to date on the newest sighting reports that we get, you can go to our blog channel, and then we'll also put those sighting reports and our investigations on our YouTube. R.M.S.O. Bigfoot on YouTube and blogspot.com.
Do you have a group on Facebook?
Yes, and you can find us on Facebook under R.M.S.O. Bigfoot or Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization. And if you find any of our media sites, we got links to each one and the other sites. And we actually need to put Bigfoot Radio on our YouTube channel. I see that Duke at the bottom of his on his featured channels, he's got us down there, so we need to return the favor and put World Bigfoot Radio
Thanks,
on
brother.
one of our featured channels.
And don't forget that you're on MeWe too, the alternate social media platform that's not fascistic and censorship happy. MeWe, M-E-W-E. Me and Kelly actually have the largest active Bigfoot groups on that platform. And there's a bunch of them over there, a bunch of really good groups.
Yeah, a lot of people are finding their way there, and I let people know about the alternative site MeWe that doesn't censor free speech.
Damn right. You know, and if you want to, there's a lot of Bigfoot stuff that they like to censor. So it's better to be on a platform where they're not going to do that. You can talk about whatever the heck you want.
Yeah, I'm in shock at some of the Bigfoot sites and Bigfoot videos that get censored. I'm like, what's going on here? There's nothing wrong with that, but it happens.
Yep, it sure does. Well, I had one of mine. They gave me a copyright strike and told me to take it down off my channel. They still haven't removed the copyright strike, even though it was like a year and a half ago. And I had permission from the guy that filmed the video to use the video, but I still got a copyright strike. And he contacted him and said, hey, he had permission. They don't care. They're just looking for some reason to screw with my channel.
That for some reason you struck a nerve.
Mm-hmm. So it goes. Oh, well, there's other platforms. And guess what? I'm also on Rumble, Bright Eon, BitChute, and Odyssey, which don't censor you. And
All right.
middle finger, Susan Wojcicki. Don't give a shit about YouTube. You're going down. Already have my platform backed up elsewhere, and I got one of the bigger. You go to any of those platforms and put in the word Bigfoot and see how many of my videos come up. Yeah, I'm not worried about YouTube. Don't care.
Well, one more thing I want to state is the biggest Bigfoot track that we ever found and casted was like close to 19 inches. I mean, close enough.
That's big.
We call it 19 inches. Well, the biggest one we ever found, and Derek found it in Sulu, Montana, when we were on our bombing expedition out there. We based camp in Sulu, and you know, there were several Bigfoot sighting reports in the area that we checked
Which
out.
side of the valley is that on? Is that on the Bitterroot side or is it on the Sapphire side?
Sula is just barely across the border, and
You're in
do
the
believe,
Bitterroots.
yeah, I do believe it's Bitterroots, and
Yep.
the bombing location I believe is also in the Bitterroots.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it was still it's still
That's
about
on the
15
west side.
miles away, but that's where our base camp was. But near our base camp, Derek found 23-inch Bigfoot tracks,
Good
and
God.
this is like 4 or 5 years ago, and right away a bunch of our viewers started saying that's Glag. And that's back before Kevin passed away and stuff.
Yep.
And you know, and we're like,
Well, the last track
Glag,
we saw
and
from Glag, yeah, was last time we Kevin ran into him when he was up here in 2019, and Glag left a couple of footprints, and they're 26.5 inches.
and I think this is 2018 that we found those, and everybody says that it was Glag.
That's close to the same size. 20. No, he wouldn't have been able to grow that much that fast.
23.
Another one. Yeah.
But you know, just because you find a 23-inch track doesn't mean that's necessarily the size of the foot. It's just the damage it did to the ground. I mean, they can slide a little bit while they're making the track and everything, but that was the size of the track, and I was just in disbelief at the size of it. But yeah, a lot of people were. A lot of our viewers that watched Kevin's channel says that's Glag, you know, because we were in Montana.
Well, we don't know. See, and Glag his base was in Idaho, and he wasn't supposed to have been in the
And
Bitterroot
that's right
Mountains
on
when
the
he was
border.
young. Yeah. And Kevin actually used to go dirt bike riding into the Bitterroot Mountains, and he said, I wouldn't bring Glag over there because the Sasquatch over there are too angry. They'd hurl rocks at us every time we went driving through there. So I kept Glag over in the mountains in Idaho. But since then, he's an adult, and he's probably wandered around all over the damn place, so who knows where you're going to run into him. He was
Well,
over
this
here in Montana when Kevin was here.
well, this may sound weird, but I get excited when I read or hear about aggressive Bigfoot sighting reports because I feel like the aggressive ones are going to be the easier ones to get on camera. And I don't think Jenny appreciates this, but I get an aggressive Bigfoot sighting report, and that moves to the top of my priority, and we're going there. Like, for instance, it was a Thursday night that I heard about. I read the reports about the Deadwood, Idaho Bigfoot sightings. 5 sightings. I mean, 5 witnesses in 24 hours, and that Bigfoot was aggressive. It was a helicopter logging crew. 2 of the people quit, and one of them was a 12-year veteran, quit the next day after they saw the Bigfoot. And as soon as I saw that report on Friday morning, I got a hold of Jenny at work, and I was like, hey, after work, we're going to Deadwood. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to Deadwood. So, I mean, it wasn't even 12 hours after I read the report. It's because they're aggressive.
Right.
I think these aggressive, I don't want the meek run away from you Bigfoot. I want the in your face Bigfoot encounters because I think those are the ones that may be easier to get on camera.
Yeah. Well, some researchers don't have too much luck with that. I mean, Todd Stanley got chased out of his research areas here in Montana. Apparently, they didn't like him or something. I
He
don't
was
have that
Bigfooting
problem.
in Montana?
Oh yeah, earlier on before he became anybody, he had 2
Uh-huh.
research areas here in Montana, and he's readily admitted a couple times that basically they chased him out. They didn't like him here. Now the Canadian Sasquatch will put up with them, but the Montana ones don't like him for some reason.
I think that Montana's got some of the most aggressive Sasquatch in the country.
Well, luckily they like me. I'm keeping on their good side, so because they're too big up here.
You've got them used to you, man.
Yeah, they're like, oh, Duke's okay.
Yeah.
He'll bring us
They-
some apples when he comes up.
They know what you look like, they know what you smell like, and they know what you sound like. They know who you
Yeah.
are.
And then they like my stupid stories too. We've actually had several times that we're in camp telling a joke or something, and when the joke gets done, you hear a wood knock from across the river. Well, what is that? Applause?
Yeah.
After the 4th time, I went, thank you. I'm here all night. And the guy next to me goes, oh, thank God you heard that. And I went, yeah, that was the 4th one. He goes, really? I missed one. Fun times. All right, brother. Well, thanks so much for doing the show. And
Thanks for having me on.
I would love to have Jenny on too if she's ever willing to do a show. She's such a hoot. It would be great to have her on. And I'd love to have you on again.
She's still at work, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, damn it.
I'm up all night. I can record anytime she's around that she wants to do it.
Here's the thing, Duke. I'm usually limited to her vacation time and weekends for our expeditions,
Yeah.
and that really limits me. I have a lot more vacation than she does, so I may just have to go do a Bigfoot expedition with you, just me.
Hell yeah, come on over, brother. You're always welcome here in Montana.
Right on.
Take you up where the big friendly ones are. We got like giant hippies here. They're like,
All right.
dude, you came up to visit. We love you. Did you bring apples? Yeah, it's a blast. I love it when I can get up there.
But I would really like, really like to bring her so you guys can meet her, and she's a great asset to being on an expedition. She's
absolutely
really good at tracking and all that.
Yep. Well, like I said, this area, my prime research area now, they're so used to us being there. Anytime we show up, we'll bring no more than like 2 new people at a time.
Yeah.
Usually it's just 1. And so they know everybody else that's in the
spook 'em.
group, and they're just, focusing on who are these new people. Well, within a few hours, they got a read on you, and they decided if they like you or not. And so far, they pretty much liked everybody. They zapped Papa Craig when he got up there, but everybody else they've been nice to.
Yeah, we found if you spook them, they'll leave an area for a year if you upset them. So they're really careful.
Well, and we don't try and trap them or trick them or anything. We never put up game cams. We don't leave. We had an audio recorder we left up one time. It was a teeny little thing, and you could put it in the pocket of the chair that's got the little cup holder. And it was so small you couldn't even see it sticking up over the top. Well, an hour after we went to sleep, you can hear footsteps walking up to it, and something taps it. And then the footsteps walk away. And at that point, we went like, this is just pointless. They know what the hell we're doing. Why are we even trying to trick them? It's just bad faith. Quit it. You know, when they decide they want to get close enough, they'll get close enough. And then they do. Every night that we're up there, they're around camp. You can hear them and stuff. So that's always exciting. They're there to listen to your campfire stories. It sure seems like it, man. It really seems like it. As soon as it gets dark. Well, when we were up there with William, they kept getting closer and closer to camp, and he does not camp with them down there in the south. They're dangerous. And he doesn't camp anyway. So it's been like 30, 40 years since he's been camping. And it's getting dark, and it's after dark, and now you can hear two places across the road from us. They're making noise over there, and he can hear them. And then there's three places behind us across the river where they're making noise at the same time. So you got at least 5 individuals there, and he's getting kind of spooked because they're getting closer and noisier, and we're used to just ignoring it. And he says, "Are you guys hearing this over here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hold on." And I turn around behind me and go, "Hey guys, how you doing?" Well, that should take care of it. And he's looking at me like, "Are you freaking nuts?" And then about like 3 or 4 minutes later, he goes, "They quit making noise." And I went, "Yeah, because we let them know that we're hearing them now. They're close enough. They can hear what we're saying." So it's a totally different dynamic. I've never experienced this anywhere else where I've had a stable population in an area like that where you could just keep going back year after year after year after year and get them acclimated to you to the point where they're totally not worried about you anymore. You know, you're on the we trust you list. That takes a lot of time to get them used to that, you know. So I'm just thrilled and blessed that I'm in a situation like that. But man, it has been an absolute blast having you on the show. If you're ever willing to come back on again, we want to have you back on the show. You got so much tons of stuff that's happened that you can share from over the years that everybody would love to hear. And meanwhile, get over to Kelly's channel and go check out all of his stuff. Anything else you wanted to add, bro?
No, I'm happy to be on your show, brother.
All righty. Thank you. Okay, everybody, we are done. Did I turn off record? I think I got record turned off. Hold on, they keep moving the controls around. So make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do not hug the Wookiee.